Good evening. Thank you for joining us. My apologies that we are running about 15 minutes late, but the board is returning from closed session. And as a first item, would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll start with roll call. So, Mrs. Mayo?
Here.
Mrs. Durkee?
Here.
Ms. Mason?
Here.
Ms. Count?
Here.
Mr. Lawrence is also here, and then we have our two student reps who are joining us here on the dais. We have Andrea Garcia and Melody Espinoza. So welcome. You're able to ask questions and participate and share your thoughts. You're not able to vote, but outside of that, you have full participation. All right. Thank you very much. So with that, from closed session, the board received updates on negotiations. The board voted on the readmission of student 12-18, and that passed 4-1. Ms. Mayo voted no, and then I believe I said the readmission because the expulsion is something that we take care of here in public. Yep. And then item 7.4, we received information on that public employee case. And that is the report out of closed session. With that, we'll move along to our student reports. And yes, Ms. Mayo?
Don't we have to do the expulsion?
I thought it would be listed. There's an item, so no, thank you. So we will go ahead, before we move to the student rep reports, we will go ahead and have item 3.2, which is the expulsion of student 1020. And as I understand it, we're going to be doing voice votes this evening due to an absence, and therefore to streamline things, we're going to go ahead and take voice votes. Is that correct? Correct. Okay, so we will be doing voice votes. So with that, item 3.2, do I have a motion?
Mr. President, I move that student number 10.20 be expelled from all schools of the Mount Diablo Unified School District, and that student number 10-20 may apply for readmission after June 3rd, 2020. Prior to readmission, student 10-20 is required to meet the following condition. The student must participate in 20 hours of individual counseling to address decision-making and anger management, participate in 30 hours of community service, attend the California Offender Program Services COPS for aggressive offenders, attend the Mount Diablo Unified School District Saturday workshop for anger management, and show evidence of a successful school experience with no suspendable infractions, maintain a 2.0 GPA or better, and have a 90% attendance rate. I'll second.
Okay. So motion by Ms. Mayo, second by Ms. Durkee. I will now start with the voice vote, starting with Ms. Mayo.
Yes.
Ms. Durkee?
Yes.
Ms. Mason?
Yes.
Ms. Count?
Yes.
And I also vote yes, so the motion passes 5-0. We will now move along to our student rep reports. Melody and Andrea, would you like to kick us off?
Good evening, President Lawrence, board members, Superintendent Dr. Martinez, members of Superintendent's Council, and members of the audience. My name is Melody Espinoza, and I am ASB Vice President.
My name is Andrea Garcia, and I'm ASB President of Mount Diablo High School. In recent events, the entire school prepared for the following senior nights: girls basketball, boys basketball, wrestling, girls soccer, and boys soccer. The day that we had all been waiting for has passed. We celebrated our esteemed athletes, for which the majority have been in there for 4 years. The school thanked them for all their hard work and dedication that they gave to the sport, and for always positively representing Mount Diablo High. It was a very momentous and happy day that the senior players will never forget.
Last week, leadership hosted a school-wide mock election. It was an opportunity for young future voters to begin to firmly state their opinions in government and develop their own political opinions. It was held through all 6 periods with leadership students delegating students and even helping young adolescents register to vote. The results were as followed. Bernie came in first, followed by Joe Biden and Bloomberg.
Last Friday, the Mount Devil High leadership students were invited to participate in the Concord High Leadership Exchange held at Concord High. This is an event which encourages student leaders to participate in the exchange of ideas that will benefit the entire student body. Ideas such as student appreciation, spirit weeks, class fundraisers, rally games, and more were discussed. The sessions and swap meets were very engaging, and students were excited to say what their own leadership class had done. Mount received extremely positive anticipation towards our multicultural rally. Many schools are hoping to be invited to our school multi, and that is being arranged right now so everything works out in regards to safety hazards.
In regards to senior events, this week is going to be a busy week. This Friday, they are having their Pie Face fundraiser, where students will get the opportunity to pie fellow students as esteemed teachers in the face with whipped cream. In addition to this, our senior movie night is also this Friday starting at 6. The movie along with food and drinks will be $10.
By far, one of the students' favorite times of the year is Multicultural Week. This is our favorite time because so many students represent not only their own cultures, but other cultures as well. It is amazing to see people from all different cultural backgrounds participate in some of the many clubs that Mount has to offer. Although we have our multicultural rally in May, clubs begin preparing their traditional dances and acts in efforts to accurately and elegantly represent the diversity that is so easily seen at Mount. Along with the multi-theme, there is also going to be a clubs carnival where clubs and classes can sell items to fundraise. There is often food sold, so everyone looks forward to that as well. I would also like to begin the discussion of a topic that my fellow teammates in the audience will talk about as well. My name is Andrea Garcia, and I have been part of the Lady Devils girls basketball program for 4 years. I have been inspired by and motivated by Coach Kat Cruz, a motivating, incredible woman who has sacrificed so much for our program over the course of 9 successful years. On Friday afternoon, Coach Kat Cruz was called into the athletic director's office and was notified that she was going to be fired and would not return next year as a basketball coach. There was absolutely no reason for her to be fired, and there were no grounds for termination whatsoever. Coach Bird did not have any excuse to fire her. All he said was that they would be going in an opposite direction, clearly signifying that he had no real reason to fire her and that he just did not like her. As a young Latina coach, she has faced so much adversity in her life and has even faced discrimination, including now. Nobody has ever sacrificed themselves so much as Ms. Kat Cruz has. The girls basketball program is one of the only programs in the entire school that has won a game. During the girls volleyball season, they did not win one game during preseason nor season. The girls basketball program is one of the only programs at the school that has even won one game, which shows that Coach Kat Cruz is doing her job. The fact that my fellow teammates and I are here taking time to fight for our beloved coach signifies that she has made such a lasting impact on us and that she should not be fired. I am aware that the district is facing budget cuts. However, I do not think that firing one of our beloved coaches is the answer. Kat Cruz works for the district as well at Ignacio Valley High School as a special ed teacher, showing that she has deep caring for her students not only at Mount but throughout the district. The fact that she was terminated at Mount shows that Mount Devil High students are being faced with much more with problems at their school. This is due to the fact that Coach Bird is our athletic director. Our program is not the only program who has had problems with him in the past. Other sports and other student athletes have protested him and have shown great dislike for him because of his practices. Coach Kat and all of you have taught us to stand up for what we believe in. Let us know that our voice matters. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And just as a quick reminder, so the board is governed by the Brown Act, and because of that, one, we are not able to comment or discuss matters that aren't placed on our agenda, which is what this one would be. We are certainly able to hear feedback, which I think it's incredibly important that students and student leaders especially have a voice and an opportunity to share that feedback. What the board can do is look to staff for follow-up and to provide us with more information. So thank you for your comments there. And so we'll move along to the next student report, please. All right, the head turning and a brain. So we've never lost a student during this, so it's going to be okay. So thank you.
Hello, hello, President Lawrence.
Hello.
Members of the board. Hello, Superintendent Martinez, Superintendent's Council, and members of the audience. I'm here my name's Elizabeth Webster, and I'm representing College Now today, and I'm unfortunately alone. So I'm going to be talking to you about both our juniors and our seniors and programs that go in between both of them. So right now, our juniors are learning about the Great Gatsby and the American Dream, and they'll follow that up by writing an essay on what that means. And they are also learning about America as an imperial power, and that will be followed up with a museum project where they take all of their efforts and knowledge of the history of America as an imperial power, and they make a group museum display that you guys can all come to see if you want. And then in AVID, they're learning about career in college and all the opportunities that they have, even though often college is only displayed rather than also career paths. And then our seniors, which is what I mean, are studying dystopias in English, and we're going to start reading The Handmaid's Tale, and we're also going to write an essay on dystopias. And in government, we are working on a podcast that is going to be about improving the public education system, so we've been taking a lot of notes on education and how we can change it. You guys might get interviewed, so be available, please.
We look forward to it.
And in AVID, we're learning how to do professional interviews, and we have some with volunteers coming up. And then our in-between programs for juniors and seniors, we have a yearbook that we're making, and we're going to have a fundraiser at Kinder's, and then we also have a mentor program, which I've talked about before. And that's all going well, and unfortunately it's college midterms, so a lot of people are feeling very stressed. And that's all I have for you today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, President Lawrence, board members, Superintendent Dr. Martinez, members of the Superintendent's Council, and members of the audience. My name is Eden Broussard, and I'm a student representative from Northgate High School. Northgate's had a lot going on recently. The leadership class just attended the Concord High Exchange, like Mount Diablo, in which we collaborated with students from the other high schools and shared lots of ideas. The juniors and seniors are working on planning our annual talent show, and auditions for that begin next week, and the show will be on March 26th, and you guys are all welcome to come. We're really excited to see like the different talents that we have, because we don't get to do stuff like this very often, so this is one of the big things where we get to showcase that. Last night the seniors hosted a senior banquet. All of the seniors were excited to see who won the Most Likely To awards, and each winner was met with lots of applause. Our rally commissioners have also been working on planning our own multicultural rally, and this rally shows our students to share their cultures with the rest of the student body. Our choir department has our biggest musical showcase coming up this Friday and Saturday, next Thursday, Friday and Saturday, called Musical America. And with that comes each group performs between 3 and 5 songs with choreo and singing, and it's just like 3 hours of great music. And we're also going well into spring sports with a few of our teams already competing. And along with that, some of our winter sports are still competing. Both our men's and women's soccer teams are still in NCS. And we have 2 people from wrestling who are headed to state, which is Cole Sanchez and Liv Villanueva, which is very exciting. And lastly, our senior night men's basketball game had a really unforgettable ending. The team manager, who's a senior, is named Ethan Leung, is a well-known student at Northgate, and he also has autism. He's the definition of having Bronco student and was very dedicated to his role as a team manager, constantly coming up and announcing when there was games and being at every practice. So during the last 20 seconds of the game, they put him into the game, and with help from our team, people on the bench, people in the stands, and the CV team helping as well, he was able to score the last shot for a buzzer beater. And it was really exciting, and like everybody stormed the court, and it was just like really nice to see. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up.
Okay. Good evening, President Lawrence, members of the board, Superintendent Dr. Martinez, Superintendent's Council, and members of the audience. My name is Robert Santa Maria, and I'm the ASB president from Concord High School. Recently at CHS, a lot has happened since the last time I was here, so bear with me. I know I'm known for talking a lot. I'll try and keep it shorter than usual. So, our academy did Valentine's Day grants for Valentine's Day, and our clubs participated in the club rush for our 8th grade day last Thursday. We recently had our elective rush as well, where students can see what classes they're interested in and what they have to offer. Also, our Black Student Union created posters to educate the student body with history facts for Black History Month. So our ladies first sung the national anthem on the Chase Center big screen. If you're interested in going, the choir boosters have their crowd feed Saturday, March 14th, so go and support our choir program. Our jazz band students attended the Campana Jazz Festival, winning multiple awards. Along with that, the music boosters recently had their dinner showcase with performances from all of our music programs for the parents on Saturday. This year, the theme was throughout the decades, playing music from all time periods from Mozart and Beethoven to Bruno Mars and Lady Gaga. There was also a special performance from our band teacher, Mr. Wahano, playing homage to Joe Barrett, a member of the orchestra and academy, who was struck by a hit-and-run driver on February 10th while in the Lincoln Library. He passed away on February 13th. A week before the incident, he applied to be an organ donor, thus saving 6 people's lives. Our boys volleyball, swimming, baseball, stunt, boys tennis, softball, and golf all started their spring season sports. Our boys soccer team has started their NCS tournament, and the girls varsity made NCS as well. Our wrestling team won their last match against Mao with a score of 45-24. Their next match is the CIF match, which is Thursday through Saturday. Our boys basketball won their senior night against Berean, and the boys team have their NCS tournament with their second round tomorrow and Wednesday. Our boys varsity baseball have their first game at Mount Eden tomorrow at 3:30, and all of our winter sports concluded, all having played great seasons. So this is where the long part comes in. It's leadership. So a lot has happened. We finished all of our winter committees and are currently transitioning into our spring events. Our winter rally, which was the Black Light Rally, went very well. Since it's our VAPA rally, we had performances from our show choir, band, Ladies First, and Urban Dance Club. Our talent show was filled with amazing performances by our students, with Victor Ortega winning for the second year in a row. Last week, we had our 5th grade, 8th grade, and leadership exchange, so it was a very busy week for us. Our 5th grade day went magically, and we had fun activities for the kids and held a Disney quiz at the end with prizes such as stuffed animals, as well as having sashes with pins to collect. Our 8th grade day also went well, showcasing what our school has to offer, such as our sports, classes, and our award-winning programs. Our 13th annual leadership exchange also went well, and we had 13 schools attend, which included De La Salle, Carondelet, Clayton Valley, College Park, Heritage, Burin, Deer Valley, Northgate, Pittsburgh, YV, Alhambra, Mount Diablo, and of course Concord High. As you heard from Mount and Northgate, it's an event to share ideas with one another and share a common experience, so I'm just going to skip over the whole gist of what it is, just to save some time. So, the whole event was student-led, from the activities that we did, such as our table surfing game, which was hilarious and fun, to the SWATs and sessions that our students put together. At the end, we did have a dance party, which we always do, which is pretty fun. But not only that, the committee decided to put together a candy basket for each school, since our theme was Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, based off pure imagination. Our juniors and seniors have been planning prom, and the juniors have been organizing Powder Puff, and our sophomores and freshmen have been putting together fundraisers, saving up for their senior year. Not only that, our seniors are planning a senior banquet, like Mount and Northgate does, where an event where the students have a dinner and hand out senior awards. We also began accepting leadership applications for next year's class, and leadership decided to do online applications using QR codes. However, that didn't work out so well, so we decided to extend our deadline to March 3rd and do paper applications instead. And today, which is no coincidence, but today we chose our spring committees, which are going to include our multi, Clash of the Classes, March Madness, Spring Brunch, Teacher Appreciation, Open House, and of course, publicity. Thank you, and go Minutemen.
Before our next student comes up, I just want to share the entire reason that we have this meeting, the entire reason this board is here, the entire reason for this building is in support of our students. And, you know, for me, the highlight, every time we have a meeting where we have our student rep reports, that is the highlight of the meeting. And so I think to hear about the events and to hear about the challenges, it's really important, and it's a great perspective for this board. And I have never once heard a single rep report where I've said, man, that was too long. And so, you know, I would just encourage you to please take the time that you need to share, because we want to hear it. So thank you. And do we have a next report? Is that all? All right. See, I'm disappointed. I was hoping if you want, come on back up. Tell us more. So great job. Thank you to our students. You're certainly welcome to stay, but we also understand that you've got school tomorrow, and so if at any point you would like to step out, you are welcome to do so. So please go ahead. With that, we will move along to public comment, and the two of you are welcome to stay, but you can also step out at any point as well. So. All right, so we will move along to public comment. Public may address the board regarding any item within the jurisdiction that is not on the agenda. So these presentations, they're limited to 3 minutes each, or a total of 30 minutes for all the speakers. Or else the 3 minute limit may be shortened. If there are multiple speakers on any one subject, public comment may be moved to the end of the meeting. We're not doing that. And speakers are not allowed to yield their time. And as I mentioned earlier, the board is governed by the Brown Act, so we're able to listen, but we're not able to engage in a dialogue on things that are not agendized. So with that, our first speaker is Judy Jewett. And following Judy, we'll have Margaret Kern P.
Hi, my name is Judy Jewett, and I'm here from PFLAG, and we're here to invite you to the GSA Forum. So it will be on Friday, March 6th at Ignacio Valley from 4 to 8. It is the third annual GSA Forum in Mount Diablo Unified. The first was 2 years ago at Concord High with Brianna Faltzgraf. And so at the forum, the students from the GSAs from the schools throughout the district come together and meet and talk about issues common to LGBTQ students. Bullying, harassment, as you can imagine, would be high on their list, and how they would deal with that when that happens. And they look to develop a community so that they don't feel so alone. And we are looking to invite board members, administrators to come so that they feel heard, so that they feel supported, and they feel that, you know, we're growing an inclusive community for them. I know that you got emails on that, but I have more flyers in case anybody wants one, and I will leave the other flyers on the desk.
Before you hand things out, I think
I actually saw that. So if let's just say a board member couldn't come until like 6 o'clock, would that make sense, or do you need to be there at 4?
That would be perfect. The beginning is more games for the students, and then breakout sessions for adults. But by the end, we're having dinner where we sit down in discussion groups with administrators, with parents, and with the students. So that would be about the exact right time. Okay.
Could you share, for people who might not be familiar, what GSA stands for?
Oh, well, now there. It could be any number, it was historically Gay Straight Alliance. But it could be Gender Spectrum Alliance, or it could be any number, but it really is code word for LGBTQ students, forming a group that can come together and be supportive.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
So we've got Margaret, and then Shelley Foe after that. Mark
And it's
Margaret.
Margaret Kern Payne. I'm so sorry. As a special
Apologies,
educator,
okay.
I have the worst handwriting in the world.
I would challenge you on that. You've got to see mine, so thank you.
And respectfully, good evening to everybody else. I also am a member of PFLAG, and I work with Ms. Jewett for the last 3 years. Our chapter is in Clayton Concord, and we have, as she mentioned, now are approaching our 3rd annual GSA Forum. And I just wanted to share that not only do we invite you all with a lot of excitement, and hopefully administrators and some faculty will be there, but it's an opportunity, I think, to do what the mission of PFLAG is, which is to support, advocate, and educate. And as the question referenced, what is GSA? Like everything in our culture, things change very quickly. Language is changing, labels are changing. I'm from Washington, D.C. originally. Dave Chappelle calls our folk the alphabet people. And I only say that because every time you turn around, it's LBGTQIA plus, etc. So, having said all that, our people need support, and we make it our business to provide an opportunity where they can feel safe, where they can network. And I think the biggest thing that I feel is that you can't see what you want to be if it's not out there. And so this is for everybody, from the youth right up to the adults that interact with our students in the school system. And I hope to see you there. And the pizza's not too bad.
Could I just ask a question? Sure. Is it specifically high school students, or does it include other age groups, middle school as well, or?
That's an excellent question. In Mount Diablo Unified School District, we have only been working with the high school students. In our neighboring districts, that is not the case. They have already dipped down into the middle and elementary school student population. The need is there. It's been expressed by family and by faculty. So at this time, yes, it is high school.
What are the other districts that you're?
I know Moraga just recently passed some information that is in the form of a, I don't know what you really call it, but it's declaration of the fact that they are honoring the need to provide almost like a sanctuary, if you will, for LGBTQ folk within the schools. And that was, I believe, presented to their board a month ago by 2 7th graders. So props to them. Anything else I can help you with? Okay, have a good one.
So I'm going to have Shelley come up, and then we're going to take a brief pause on public comment, and I'm going to have move up item 11.5, which is recognition of one of our students. So after this one, we'll briefly pause on public comment.
All right. Good evening, Superintendent Dr. Martinez, board members, and audience. I'm Shelley Foe from Bel Air Elementary. Our big news is that Bel Air cleared the Comprehensive School and Improvement Plan program. Did we think outside the box? Of course we did, because we keep trying to look through the lens of equality, or equity, sorry. We tried to give our students what they needed in order to improve their learning, which in turn improved their scores. The hard news is that we might be losing some of the reasons that we made this possible. We may not have all the teachers next year that we have this year. Why? Because there is a formula that decides how many FTEs we get for the following year. The issue I have with this is that it doesn't look at the history of the school and how often we are We are looking for other teachers in late August and September because we have more kids than were expected. Many of my years in as a kinder teacher, my classes started out with over 40 students. Because we were told that our numbers would be low, drop the formula and look through the lens of equity and see what the schools need. There is a formula that tells us how many days we should have a vice principal at our school. Have you seen or heard about the jobs our principal and vice principal do at our school? Neither could do without the other. So pay for a full-time VP at the schools that need them. They're usually the schools that don't have enough extra money in order to pay for the other half. Again, look through the lens of equity. Who works on an average of a day or a week? How can we have an average of 24 students in the district and say that's equitable? My grandmother used to tell us to fish or cut bait, which meant to her, decide what you're going to do and then do it. So decide, is it going to be 24 or is it going to be 31? Again, looking through the lens of equity and not a formula that looks good on paper. Bel Air has been a great place to work for me and I have enjoyed my years there, but it is also frustrating to go through the same stress and struggle at the end of the year with all the uncertainty. We need to have people that want to work here and have commitment to be there. When we do, the students in the school see improvement. Let's not lose that focus. Look through the lens of equity. Realize that our schools are not cookie cutter schools. I've taught at Bel Air for the past 24 years, and because I want our students to succeed, even if we have to take the same path as everyone else, but they would succeed so much more if they followed their equity paths to become stars that shine. Thank you.
So we will take a brief pause on public comment, and then we will go ahead and move to item 11.5, which is the recognition of student Christine Mozzie as Contra Costa County Student Humanitarian of the Award. So Dr. Martinez, do we have an introduction for this?
Yes, we do. We actually have Becky Heindel, who is here from Concord High School, and I see that there's a number of folks over there as well from Concord High, maybe, and Christine, maybe. Actually, I've seen Christine out and about at different events, and again, we noticed the recognition, so we want to have Becky speak to her a little bit.
Well, there's just not enough paper. I was sitting in my car, I got here early, and I was like correcting what I was doing. There's just not enough time to say what needs to be said about this young lady. So I will read some of my letter of rec that I wrote for her. She has heard this story. She didn't know I was nominating her for this. So there are many aspects of being a high school counselor. The most important one to me is building a relationship with my students and the family so I can serve them in the best way possible. I have the best job ever, so ignore the emotions. When I received an email from the Contra Costa County seeking nominees from teachers, counselors, and school staff for the annual Student Humanitarian of the Year honor as part of the county's Dr. Martin Luther King ceremony, my first thought was, this award is for Christine Mozzie. And I started writing my letter of rec. Christine didn't even know about this award, and she had no idea she was being nominated for anything. So, in my 10 years working at Concord High, she's the first student that has left me speechless when I think about all that she has accomplished. And I have served many, many students in 10 years. She is changing lives for women of color in her community and also globally. I can honestly say that I have never worked with a more selfless teenager than Christine. I never know where to start her story, and it's a challenge to fit it all on one page. I'm in awe of the amazing young woman Christine Mozzie is and the role model she is for all students. As a Concord High student, Christine founded the Women of Color Project. It's called Project Woke. This is an Instagram-based community organization that strives to inspire and empower young girls of color. For this project, Christine was the recipient of the National Digital for Good Award sponsored by the platform I Can Help. This is a platform that was created to delete negativity on social media. This award is for teens that are making a difference in their schools and communities using technology, using social media. Christine spent a day at Facebook headquarters being honored for her positive impact in the community, and I encourage you all to look up Project Woke. If you Google her name, it will pop up. I've done it. Christine also founded the Cub Project at Concord High. This project is focused on mentoring and empowering local middle school girls, El Dorado's right across the street, to be the best that they can be, and with a transition to high school. She leads a group of 15 high school peers that are paired with 2 middle school girls whom they meet with once a month after school. Christine also works at an after-school program with elementary school students 4 days a week and is a math tutor 2 days a week, as well as the BSU co-president, a link crew leader, a 2P peer educator. This girl does it all. So even with this busy schedule and with all her projects and jobs, she's able to maintain an impressive 4.1 GPA. And she actually spent a month in Peru this summer working in medical clinics, where her passion for public health really was, that fire was lit under her. She was actually doing medical procedures. She was doing things she probably shouldn't have done. We won't go there. I've heard too many stories. We won't go there. When asked where she gets her drive and determination, Christine shared with me that her inspiration stemmed from her experience of being an immigrant and wanting to work hard to achieve great things for all the kids that do not have the opportunities that she has been offered. Her passion is to help the youth in her community. However, as she has grown, she has taken her contributions to society to the global level, especially with the Women of Color Project. It was an honor to recommend a student that always goes above and beyond, inspires to change the lives of others, and is a modeled citizen with integrity for the Contra Costa County Student Humanitarian of the Year Award. She is truly a deserving student that leads by example. Christine found out that she won this award in her AP Lit class. I knew beforehand because I received the phone call, and I wanted it to be a surprise, so I asked her AP Lit teacher if I could interrupt her class, and she thankfully said yes. And Christine looked at me and she goes, "What did you do?" I go, "I didn't do anything. You have a phone call." She goes, "What did you do, Miss Heindel?" "I didn't do anything. Just listen to this phone call." So I told her, and she was just in shock. So when she came to me after this, she asked me, she goes, "What did you write? What did you write in this letter?" So I said, "Do you want me to read it to you?" And she goes, "Yes." And so I read it to her, and with tears in her eyes, she said, "Is this what you think of me?" And I said, "No, this is who you are." This is Juju Benna. This is what Christine calls her great aunt. This is Juju Benna. This is who has inspired Christine to be who she is, and I think she should be recognized too because she puts up with this teenage girl. and she like drives her around all over the place. So this is who has modeled this type of behavior and this type of citizen for Christine to follow.
Christine, would you like to share a few words with us?
Yes. I want to start off by thanking you guys for having me here today. I really appreciate you taking your time to recognize me. I never thought that me just trying to fill the hours between homework and my job would turn into something like this. So I really, really appreciate it. I want to also thank my counselor, Ms. Heindel, and all the other counselors she has in her crew for all the work that they do for the students at Concord High School. To put it simply, I just think of myself as a kid with a lot of ambition, and I know that if Ms. Heindel hadn't seen that ambition and that potential in me on that first day of high school when I was sobbing to her, right before first period, I would not be where I am today. And I just know that because of everything that's going on in the background of the district and the hard decisions you guys have to make, I just want to make a point to say that the counselors at our schools are one thing that you should not strip away from me and my peers. I know for a fact that if it weren't for Miss Heindel, and if it weren't for Miss B, and if it weren't for Miss Owen and all of their colleagues, we would not be here today. We need the mental health support, the emotional support, and we need them to build us up and to encourage us and do all these things, because no one else is gonna. Some of my peers don't have the same support. So thank you to you guys, and thank you to everyone for coming, and thank you to all my counselors and everyone that's ever supported me. I really appreciate it.
Christine, I've seen your Project Woke project on Instagram, and just very impressed, and I want to thank you for coming and joining us all tonight and taking the time out of your very busy schedule, clearly, to share your story with us.
And we're all envious that you got to go to Facebook and the rest of us didn't.
Thank you. That's going to be hard to follow. But we're going to slide back to public comment, but that is, I mean, when we talk about some of just the tremendous things going on in our district and tremendous students, as well as the support she's getting from the counselors and the entire community, it's just, it's incredibly inspirational. So, and I just have, are you a senior? What year are you?
I'm a senior.
We hope you come back and visit us and let us, because I think everyone in this room knows that you are destined for even greater things, and we're going to be so proud, and we would love to continue to hear from you, and I'm sure we are going to one way or another, so congratulations. With that, we will have Rachel Avia, followed by William, I believe it's William Gutierrez, but I'm not quite sure on the last name. So Rachel and then William. Might be William Guzman, so, okay.
Hi. So, yeah, I'm Rachel. Just hi. And basically, Christina, when she was talking about how the counselors should not be cut because of all the amazing work that they do, that's basically what I was going to talk about too. So, a few weeks ago, I found out that the district was thinking about, like, had to do budget cuts and was thinking about cutting the counselors. But frankly, I think that would be a terrible decision, because they're so incredibly helpful and they're always there for their students and just are so ready to help them with anything that they need, through like their own personal problems, through their school problems. They write the college app recommendations. I mean, Christina wouldn't have been where she is today without Ms. Heindel. And they are just so incredibly helpful, and they have helped me through so much, and they have helped my friends through so much, and we've all been so greatly affected by them. And that we already lost a counselor last year, so to lose another one, they would just put like a heavier workload on them, being that we already have like 1,300 students at Concord High. And so to have just 2 counselors, they would have way too many students and way too heavy of a workload to be able to handle all that. And I just think that we need more counselors and more people there to help our students. That's why.
Thank you so much. And following William, we'll have Craig Yen.
Good evening, board, and good evening, audience. My name is William Guzman. I am a student at Concord High School, and I know there's a lot of talk and like a lot of complaining about budget cuts and funding issues, but honestly, I don't think I've ever heard anyone really like ask what can we do as a student or as a community to help with these budget cuts or these funding issues.
Yeah. Thank you. I mean, I think you are the
Great question.
No, it is a tremendous question. I think we're going to have some information. So right now, in this forum, we can't answer it, but we are going to have, if you're able to stay or if you want to watch, that we are going to have a session a little later in the agenda on the budget, and that would be the time where we could talk about some of those things. So thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
And can we also say that there's just resources in terms of information with the district? That's allowed, right? So the superintendent has a Friday letter that's on the mdusd.org website that often has information like that about how people can take action. And then each of us as board members often have either like a web page or a Facebook page where we post things like that as well. So that's something else that you can look for.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So Frank, followed by Giovanni Gomez.
Good evening, Superintendent Martinez, board members, and audience. My name is Craig Yen, and I'm from Valley Verde Elementary, and it's my 17th year in this district. I'm looking at the spot over there where it is that we dumped out mugs, when it is we received mugs saying that we were appreciated. I'm going to talk about the C's within education. One of my concerns is class sizes. Numbers of 31, 31, 30 in TK through 3rd grade. Max sizes of 33 within 4th through 5th with this incoming tentative agreement. That is concerning. Our certificated teachers, they do make a difference within the lives of our students, and those connections do matter. Our counselors, what do you matter. In the limited time that they have at our elementary sites, they do meet with our students and work with them on those problems that they are facing. Our classified staff, they make a difference. In our own situation, our PTA is fortunate enough to pay for some instructional assistants who help to set up science lab experiments for us. And without that support, our students wouldn't have that hands-on science. I want some clarity. At the Thursday meeting, the chief business officer, my understanding was that we were going to go ahead and have a clarity about the budget situation here. And they're going to talk about the cuts and the amounts that those cuts and those decisions we're going to have on the budget. And yet we're going to have another presentation rehashing what it is that we've seen already, and then just giving some more of that feedback. I'm concerned. I'm concerned about what the future holds for our staff and our students at this district. The carryover being whittled down from $87 million to the minimum of $3 million for a reserve. If I ran a budget like that, it just would not work. To the speaker right before me, if they go to the district website, so he's still here, go to the district website and go to the budget solutions along the left-hand side, you'll be able to see a lot of this information. So, care about what it is, put some care into these difficult cuts and these difficult decisions that are being made, and it's on a time crunch. You have a board meeting next week, but we needed the information tonight so that we could start making some of those cuts tonight. 21 million in cuts necessary. Not sure how we got this from where we are.
So we have Giovanni Gomez, followed by Alexa Soto.
Hello. So I'm your average unmotivated and angsty teen.
I think by being here tonight, you already proved you're not, so.
No, I wasn't planning on coming, but I was invited by a friend. And so just me being pretty unmotivated and having no real direction in life. I didn't really like any of my classes. I don't try in most of my classes. Yet I still pass them. But the one class that really has helped me, obtain a real passion is engineering. And so what I've heard is that we're actually cutting one of my favorite classes. One of the classes that we I personally really like, since it explores many topics of engineering, from like just about any topic, just a very fundamentals. It's called POE, so Principles of Engineering. And I heard we're cutting that class along with EDD, which is what I'm taking. It's Engineering Development and Design. And well, like it's just such a beneficial class in my opinion, since it allows all range of engineering to be explored by the students and to really understand what they want, what they like, what it's like in those specific fields. And I would just like have a question, or like why are we cutting that class and EDD?
What high school do you attend?
I go to Concord High.
Concord High.
Yeah.
I would just ask that Mr. Martinez provide us with some information if it's available.
We don't have the information tonight, but again, thank you for your question. We will get the information to the board and provide some more information out.
Okay, thank you.
Alexis Soto, followed by Jade Green.
I think they left.
We'll go to Jade Green, and then...
No, she left.
Okay. Yeah. Jade Green, Linda Ortega. Yeah. If either of those folks are still here, we'll give them a chance.
Good evening, President Lawrence, school board members, Dr. Martinez, and the members of the audience. My name is Linda Ortega, and I am the Vice President of Medea. And for the students in the audience, that's the Teachers Union and the counselors. So we represent the almost 1,600 members, Medea members. First of all, I want to thank the school board for attending the Alcosta School Board Breakfast on Saturday. Thank you to all 5 of you for attending and for being one of the first school boards to pass the Schools and Community First Resolution. As we heard, some of the other districts have not passed it, but you were our GATE students, our AP students, and thank you for doing that and showing the rest of the communities how much you care. I've always enjoyed these meetings because it gives local unions and school boards an opportunity to come together with a common cause, and this time we're all looking for the same thing, and that is more school funding. Unfortunately, I'm here this evening because I'm very frustrated from some of the conversations I've been having with some of our members. I'm hearing that at many of our at many staff meetings throughout the district, our members are being told by principals and district managers that the upcoming cuts are because of the teachers' TA. And so I feel that our teachers, our members, are being shamed. And I know this is a PBIS district, and I don't feel that this is a PBIS form of sharing and understanding. Everything I've learned from being part of PBIS, it goes all against all of that. So I find it shameful that our members are being shamed and bullied because our members deserve a livable wage and not forced to work 2 or 3 jobs just to make ends meet. So, Dr. Martinez, could you please direct your admins to please stop blaming our hardworking teachers and staff, and to stop pit one group against another? Just isn't what, it doesn't improve the morale in our district, and it isn't healthy. As we know, PBIS is all about healthy relationships. Please tell them to stop. Thank you.
All right. With that brings to an end our public comment. We will now move.
No.
Okay.
Yeah, we were the first ones to turn them in.
Oh, it's on the what? 9 or 17.5 is what we have.
Under 9.
So
Yeah,
I'm
we
happy.
turned them in.
Okay.
You can, they can speak.
Yeah,
Just have to
so,
give us their name.
yeah,
Well, they
I'm-
don't have to give their name. but-
So I'm happy if you would like to come up. Those were all the cards I had, but if you would like to please come on up. If you'd be so kind as to identify yourself, that would be great. If you get a chance, you can fill out a yellow card afterwards, but we want to make sure everyone has an opportunity to speak.
So all the counseling cards are gone?
Separate cards?
Yes, they all have separate cards, so all the counseling cards are gone. Well, if that's not a sign.
Are they marked, were they marked 9.1?
We turned them into the general, yeah.
No, I
But
think
they
they
were
were marked wrong. But that doesn't, they were marked.
Sorry.
We want to hear from you. There is no conspiracy. Please go right ahead, and so we would be delighted to hear from you.
Good evening. My name is Rima Boujoude, and I am a member of the counseling team from Concord High School and a proud member of the MDUSD counselors. You may remember that we spoke at the board meeting on October 28th, and at that time we reported that our counseling department had served students 1,566 times. As of today, that number has more than doubled to 3,408. Because much of the work we do in supporting students is done behind the scenes, there can be a lot of misunderstanding about what we do and how much we do for our students. So we'd like to take this time to educate you on what our role is and how we help students, teachers, parents, and administrators. As high school counselors, most people assume all we do is scheduling. Either that or we wait in our offices all day long for someone to come in crying. On the contrary, we do a lot more than that. In addition to helping students plan their courses, change their schedules, prep programming for the next years, we also run our student success team meetings, provide brief counseling to address anxiety, depression, grief, interpersonal conflict, family issues, and so much more. You may think we are only referring to students here, but the reality is that sometimes teachers, parents, and other adults need a safe space too. We provide academic interventions for DNF students. We hold numerous conversations with students and their families about credit recovery options and getting back on track. We work on uncovering trends for poor attendance and ways to address them either by calling home, holding meetings, or sending our student resource officer or CWA for home visits. And we work with our SRO on a regular basis to support students in crisis. We assist with our HOPE and Foster Youth Service programs to get students the resources they need. And after our contract hours end for the day, we will still be in communication with our administrative team. In times of crisis, we are triaging and developing a plan for when school is back in session. It would take hours to explain our job in full, but hopefully you have an idea of the important work we do as counselors. My co-counselor Leanne Owen is here to provide you with some more examples. Thank you for listening.
Hello, I am Leanne Owen, a school counselor from Concord High School. As you just heard from Rima, our job is never ending. Daily, we wear many hats while we tackle the numerous responsibilities within our role as school counselors. One of our most important duties is to ensure that our students stay on track and blossom into successful, well-adjusted young adults who are college and career ready. Helping students learn about themselves and their skills, strengths, abilities, and interests is critical. And we help our students realize their potential as they transition into their lives beyond high school. We work as a team to educate students and staff on A to G requirements, opportunities for summer programs, internships, scholarships, and ways to explore post-secondary life. As counselors, we know that college is not a one-size-fits-all, and we work with each student individually to explore their path after high school, whether that's college, trade school, joining a labor union, joining the military, or full-time work. We write letters of recommendation for students who are applying for college, scholarships, and jobs. We meet with every freshman to create a 4-year plan so they can start thinking ahead towards graduation. We discuss career options and what training and education it takes for our students to achieve their goals. The list goes on, and I hope you have a clear view of what counselors do and what an impact it would be to reduce or eliminate the counselors in our schools. I haven't mentioned the other grade levels, but it's also important to note that our work at high school would not be as impactful if students didn't have the support from elementary and middle school counselors, laying a foundation during these crucial years of development. Our elementary counselors foster the foundational skills needed to excel in the classroom by supporting students at an incredibly formative period of their young lives. Elementary school counselors help children develop good habits both in and out of school. Our middle school counselors provide critical support for students during adolescence and play a major role in supporting the emerging self-identity of their students. Because the knowledge, attitudes, and skills students acquire during these years build the foundation for future success, the role of a middle school counselor is incredibly significant. As you're looking at budget cuts, please consider all the ways counselors impact our community. Imagine our district with less support in a time with social emotional issues on the rise and no safe space for our students to go. As a parent myself with a 3rd grader and a 5th grader here in the district, I find comfort in knowing that my children have a counselor to support them when it's needed. Thank you for your time.
Good evening. My name is Nancy Wallen, and I am an elementary school counselor here in the district. And I'm honored to speak for all of my counselors that are 20% of them are here this evening, just to give you a sense of if you were to budget cut, there's 20% of us here this evening. Early intervention is something that I take very seriously. I wave the flag of the revolution of the pre-K, kindergarten, and elementary students. And I know that you're aware that there are adverse experiences occurring in the lives of our youngest students every day. They need support and attention to maintain and strengthen their regulatory functioning and to build their resilience to make it through the school day and to continue learning. A student cannot regulate and utilize higher brain functioning at the same time. Other humans that are trained in the skills of co-regulation, which is a teacher, a counselor, somebody that has that skill. It's happening right now as there's nodding. Co-regulating me, appreciate that. I serve two schools in the district, and I have over 72 consents to work with students. I see 900 students a week, individually and in groups. I have the pleasure of seeing the whole student body through my all-school intervention of my student store. Our store used to run only during recess, and many students weren't able to turn in the PBIS bucks that they had because there wasn't time. When I arrived on campus, I recognized that in order to serve the students, I had to serve the students. So I started running the store so that they could come and connect with me. And though it took 20 minutes out of their day, they were able to come to me, shop, have an interaction with a human being, and realize that I am the school counselor. This lady with the purple hair is here for them whenever they will need. They started realizing this, connecting with me, and that co-regulation really began to happen. The first year, as I have said before, hundreds of thousands of dollars have been saved in these kids' pockets since kindergarten. We ran through a lot of stuff at that store. Somebody that I've studied with for years, Dr. Bruce Perry, who's a trauma-focused psychiatrist, is one of my favorite quotes. For years, the mental health professionals taught people that they could be psychologically healthy without social support, that unless you love yourself, no one else will love you. The truth is you cannot love yourself unless you yourself have been loved and are loved. The capacity to love cannot be built in isolation. I don't want to isolate our students by removing the counselors from them. I want to wrap them up with understanding, humanity, and their love of learning will follow. Thank you so much.
Hello, board members. My name is Edmund Perryman. This is my 6th year working for the school district. After working as an SEA for 4 years, I completed my degree in May and returned to 2 separate sites working at both Pine Hollow Middle School and Diablo View Middle School. At Pine Hollow, I split a caseload of close to 600 students, working only 3 days a week, and 620 students split working Tuesdays and Thursdays at Diablo View. In 2019, before the school year, I was at the risk of losing my job. I was sent a slip stating that I wouldn't have a job. Now, we are all in that situation again, including myself as a probationary employee. People ask, why do we need school counselors? We wear a lot of hats at our sites. I'm included in I do the web program to transition 6th graders into middle school. I also work as a sports program coordinator. I'm on the site council, as well as the PBIS team. We wear a lot of hats. We deal with academics, we deal with crisis intervention and behavior support such as PBIS. We are the ones communicating with parents to keep them away from interventions where the district has to get involved. We listen and communicate with parents, whether it's supporting teachers to set up meetings or providing support that parents can utilize in the home for creating a safe environment on campus. We provide support both emotionally and socially. We are the ones putting out the fires on our campuses, so to speak. We are the ones on the front line of crisis situations involving that are on our sites. As of now, the school psychologists are overwhelmed with testing and providing counseling support for students with IEPs. Don't get me wrong. I love our school counselors, our school psychologists, and I'm not here to throw anyone under the bus. I simply want you all to recognize that we are doing the job of both academic counselors and providing emotional support for our students with mental health disorders. There's a trend in self-harm, and we speak to parents and students that need referrals to mental health. We empathize for all of our students and families, including those students that need referrals to our HOPE program and our students in foster care and other programs. We provide groups for our students and restorative circles, and we all communicate with our feeder schools to help with student transition. We monitor grades and try to make sure our students don't fail. So why school counselors? We are the ones that see potential in our students both inside and outside of school. And I'm telling you now that our students need our support. Thank you.
Did we get everybody? Anybody else for public comment? So I apologize that we didn't have cards, but thank you. And I'll say that in my board report, some of the issues that have come up I plan on addressing, as well as we'll have the conversation on one of our later items, number 17.5, around the budget, in which case that's the opportunity where the board can talk about some of these things. We cannot do it right now. So, but thank you, and your comments have certainly been heard. So with that, we'll move along to communications, district organizations. At regular board meetings, a single spokesperson of each recognized district org may make a brief presentation. Items are limited to those which are informational. And with that, I will invite up Anita Johnson from Medea.
Good evening. I'm Anita Johnson, president of Medea. And I have 9 quick comments tonight. I will try and keep it quick. First, I want to commend Dr. Martinez for the excellent presentation that he did Thursday night at Riverview Middle School about the budget cuts. I think that his comments really put the whole budget problem in a really clear focus for parents, and it was a very transparent process, so I appreciate that. Secondly, I want to encourage you to keep the cuts away from anybody that has anything to do with our students, including teachers, librarians, counselors, and TOSAs, and all of the other people who impact the students every single day. Most importantly, well, I'm not going to say most important, these are all important. I just want to let you know you don't need to cut $21 million. If you look at the budget, based on the unaudited actuals, it takes out a lot of the confusion regarding a lot of the carryover and the grant money that's in there with the first interim, and you don't have to use the first interim. The best number to use is the unaudited actuals, because those are real numbers, and that means that you have to cut about $10 million less. So looking at cuts of $11 million is much more palatable. So I really encourage you to look carefully at those numbers. Next, we are really concerned about where the staff's recommendations are. We expected that you would get recommendations this evening listed by line item and the amount for each line item. Everybody was waiting for 1 o'clock this afternoon to see that list, and when the presentation went up, it wasn't there. So now we have no idea what the recommendation is to you, or how you're possibly going to make decisions next Monday night if you don't have specific recommendations and dollar amounts tonight. So hopefully someone can speak to that later this evening. Wanted to let you know that per our contract, the seniority list was due on February the 15th out to all of the sites and to us. And there's a lot of anxiety right now. People want to know where they are on the seniority list. So we have been waiting for it. And it is 10 days late. And so I encourage you to ask why that is late, or why that deadline got missed. Also, completely unrelated to any of the budget cuts, is we have a serious problem with SEA vacancies. And I know that you have been hearing that for years. It's critical, it's absolutely critical this year at our 2 preschools, at Shadelands and at Robert Shearer. We have classrooms that are supposed to have 4 SEAs, and on some days only 2 are there because there are 2 vacancies and there aren't subs coming for those vacancies. So those teachers, they're not able to get all the diapers changed. It's really a really scary situation, and they talk about they try to make sure that there's always an adult holding every child's hand when they're going to the playground and things, and they can't do that because they're down 2 staff members. So I really encourage you to look into that situation and find a solution. Also wanted to thank you for all this careful work that you're doing. I know that you are all looking at the budget information and the reduction information really carefully, and I appreciate the attention that you're paying to the issue. Wanted to let people know that Academy Awards nominations, we have to think about acknowledging people's successes and recognizing the good work of all of our colleagues, especially in these difficult times. Nominations are due this Friday, February the 28th. So if anybody out there in the audience or any of you have somebody that you want to nominate, please be sure and get that in. And finally, the reason that we are looking at budget cuts is because the state of California does not adequately fund our schools. One of the solutions is Schools and Communities First. This is a petition to put a proposition on the ballot that will increase funding for schools in the state by $12 billion. And it will do that by increasing property taxes on commercial property. Will not impact residential property at all. If there's anybody here who hasn't signed this, please come and see me to sign it. And thank you all. Have a great evening.
Thank you. With that, we're going to move along to give folks a moment to clear out, and then we're going to move along to recognition and resolutions. The first of which is item 11.1. So review and potential approval of recognition of Arts Education Month. I'm just going to make a prediction. I think this one will pass. We'll see. I think there's going to be strong support from some board members on this one. So who would like to go ahead and 1, make a motion, and 2, if there's any comment on it.
I would make a motion that we approve the resolution 19/20-37 for Arts Education Month.
Second.
So we have a motion from Ms. Mason and a second from Ms. Count. And I'm sorry, Mr. Gary, you're saying it's no longer on the agenda? So it's on the public. We're doing voice vote.
Yep.
So if you're ever going to be kicked out, I guess when we're doing a voice vote, so with that, I will start to my right this time. So I'll start with Ms. Count.
Yes.
Ms. Mason.
Yes.
Ms. Durkee.
Yes.
Ms. Mayo.
Yes.
And I also vote yes, and the motion carries 5-0. So with that, we'll move along to item 11.2. Also confident of strong support of the review and potential approval of resolution in recognition of Women's History Month.
I move to approve resolution 19/20-38 for Women's History Month.
Second.
All right. Yet again, keeping with it, please.
So I was thinking about this ahead of time. It's fascinating to me that we are doing this, that we still do this, and thinking about the women's movement for some of us that have been around for a long time, that our experience over the years with this issue of women's equality and equity. And so we have the Equal Rights Amendment. I remember it well from the 70s, where we were trying to get it passed nationally, and it failed. Each state has to approve it, and in order for it to become an actual amendment. I just want to put suggest that people look at a video. It's called Equal Beats Equal. I think it's on Comcast. I think you'll find it. to help people understand the rights that women don't have. We would think, we think in this day and age that it's all good, but when it comes down to cases that actually go to the Supreme Court, it's shocking what we don't have. So I just want to take this opportunity for people to educate themselves about the Equal Rights Amendment. Apparently we now got enough states, but now they said, oh, sorry girls, you got to start all over again. So we have to go through the whole process again. It's still not eligible for vote nationally. So thank you. I'm also opposed.
So I will start again to my right. Ms. Count?
Yes.
Ms. Mason?
Yes.
Ms. Durkee?
Yes, yes.
Ms. Mayo?
Yes.
And I also vote yes. Motion carries 5-0. And we will move along to item 11.3. Review and potential approval of resolution in recognition of National School Breakfast Week.
It's busy. I'll make a motion, we approve resolution 19/20-40 in recognition of National School Breakfast Week.
Second.
All right, so motion by Ms. Mason, second by Ms. Mayo. I will start on my left and start with Ms. Mayo.
I'm in favor of the meal that's the most important of the day. Yes.
Yes.
Ms. Mason?
Yes.
Ms. Count?
Yes.
And far from me be it to stand in the way of the most important meal of the day, so I will vote yes, 5-0 vote, and motion passes. So moving along to item 11.4, review and potential approval of resolution for personnel with variable term waivers. Dr. Martinez?
Yes, this is just one individual that we're bringing before you that needs the waiver to be able to officially stay in the assignment for this year.
I would make a motion to approve the variable term waiver.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Mason, second by Ms. Count, and I'll start with Ms. Mason.
Yes.
Ms. Count?
Yes.
Ms. Mayo?
Yes.
Ms. Durkee?
Yes.
And I also vote yes. Motion passes 5-0. We already celebrated and recognized Christine Mazzi, and so we will move along to item 12.1, which is board member reports. I will start with Ms. Count.
Thank you. So just a few, there's been so many things to attend lately. I just first of all want to say thank you to all of my fellow board members and superintendent for, I think as a team we make it out to all of these things. I wish I could clone myself and enjoy making it out to all of them myself. But was able to attend a few items. One was the City of Concord was looking at a prospective site for a CSU campus. And so they had a meeting at the City Council chambers with people from different perspectives to talk about that and why it's an important possibility. And was pleased to be able to share how our adult education works in concert with our community colleges and how CSU could fit into that picture as well. The Diamante dinner, I know a number of us went to see, and that was just such an incredible opportunity for our students, and I assume Dr. Martinez is going to talk a little bit more about that, but incredible to meet, was it 30-some students? 33 that have this opportunity to start taking a college class at DVC already right now, and move smoothly into that program along with internships. It was just incredible. It's those kind of partnerships that are just so exciting for our students. The Yours Humanly Gala also was a very exciting opportunity. I think just in the times of these budget cuts, the community partnerships is what kind of saves us in a lot of ways, and provides those things that we can't provide ourselves. So really great to make that connection as well. Want to thank the dedicated staff and everyone who participated in the budget community meetings last week. It was a lot of information that's coming out all at once. And I don't know if the staff have been sleeping at all in our fiscal department, but they've done a great job really just working nonstop to make sure we get the right numbers, and to really communicate them out there. And I really appreciate all of the community members who came and have just participated in all different ways, whether it's through the, in person or through these various surveys and online. That's every voice, I think, is helping us to make these super tough decisions. So shout out to everybody on that. This morning I also went to CSBA had a LCAP training on the new template for school board members. So I assume staff is already aware of these things, but as school board members, it's really good for us to be up to date on the latest. There are some real specifics in there about how they're going to be tracking the supplemental dollars and how that's making a difference, particularly for specific student populations. So our next LCAP will be, it'll be a very different template. Supposedly it will cut the number of pages in half. So that'll be good. And then I just wanted to say that, I think we've been hearing, at the various budget meetings about all the important parts of our district. And really, there's nothing that I think any of us want to cut, right? If we could do all of this with full funding from the state, even adequate funding from the state, we don't even have to be in the top 5 yet. We would take average, But that, that the study that struck me the most is the one that I think I've mentioned before, the Stanford study from 2018 that talks about just adequate funding. They just looked at the most basic things that our state says that we are supposed to be doing in our public schools. And if you were to do that in the most efficient way possible, that's not even actually humanly possible kind of thing, and then they cut another 10% off of that, and that's what they called adequate. And that said that we should be spending $25 billion more across the state of California on public education. And if you type in Mount Diablo on that site, you get 150 million more per year that we should have. Not for extras, just for basics, right? So, so I think the thing for us all to keep in mind as we go through this process is that, our staff, our teachers, everybody involved in this system is working under the conditions of what has been for years, has been an incredibly underfunded system. So it's a situation where I think it's a whole lot of people that are trying their best with what they have. So, the more that we can work together to try to make the best decisions we can. But also I would say, for everyone who has shared their stories with us on these budget surveys, please send those same stories to, tweet them out, email them, call the governor and our state legislators. They need to hear every single story because they're not feeling the urgency that we feel. And it's not just Mount Diablo. This is districts across the state. I just saw today San Francisco now has announced a very similar level of cuts to us, right? So it's not even just Oakland and LA and West Contra. It's hitting everybody. So, and lastly, I saw the notes going around on Twitter. So if you're a high school student or if you know a high school student, don't forget the FAFSA is due March 2nd. Thank you.
Ms. Mason.
In addition to the breakfast that was mentioned already and the Diamante dinner, I also went to a Cash for College event at Concord High School, which was really nice that they put on for kids to help families get through that scary college application process. Everybody seemed to be enjoying themselves there. I also went to the DLAC meeting and to Dr. Martinez's presentation to staff at Riverview last week. And as far as the budget stuff, I'll talk more about that later in the budget area.
Ms. Durkee.
Let's see. So, I'm just repeating. I think 3 of us were at the Cash for College event. That was in partnership with Tim Grayson's office, which was lovely, and had a chance to talk to his district director at length, and he was really unclear about, what's going on with Mount Diablo. I didn't know there was a problem, so we spent a lot of time chatting about trying to help him get up to speed on the fiscal challenges that we're having. But what a great event. They had a good turnout. So I want to thank Sheila Burgum for Concord High for organizing it all. She's very enthusiastic about doing more and more, so that people were really taking advantage of the hands-on support. Yeah, I also just want to comment on the community input. I think I was impressed with the questions that were being asked by the community, and of course it's a mix of people coming. But it's, you know, school budgeting is very complicated and it's not always intuitive, and so I think the more that we can have people ask questions and explain things, it's just the better for all of us. Let's see what else. I want to thank Medea for the invitation. I love going to that breakfast every year, and so I just think, she said, it's a great opportunity to just sort of relax a little bit. We heard great presentations on the need for all of us to be focused on how do we get more funding for school. So we're all definitely behind that effort. And Diamante, I thought was very inspiring. Mr. Zabayos was really, he's the one that started this whole thing and is, you know, had gone to Dabble Valley College, and kind of an uninspired student, but got inspired by being a college student, saw himself as a college student, and went on to a very interesting and successful career. Is retired now, and so he's bringing this back. He's coming to help students in our district, which is lovely. And then the STEM Symposium at Valley View Middle School, I try to get to every year, and so Ms. Shauna Haas is sort of the lead in that, and it's always very exciting. So teachers from all over, it's not just Mount Diablo teachers, get to play with things. So, and Ms. Mayo and I were trying to learn to use a pad to make this little robot. I think it's the first time I've ever done it. It was fun. I think we did okay. But learning, you know, we sat in a class and I was like, I have no idea what anybody's talking about, but these teachers were dug in and working in teams and really, you know, learning a lot, it looked like. So, and of course, Marathon Petroleum is a big sponsor of that effort, and so we appreciate your continued support in Mount Diablo. Yeah, I think that's it.
Thank you, Ms. Mayo.
Thank you, and all of you spoke to most of the things that I attended as well. There were more than, I believe, I understood there were more than 220 attendees at the Marathon STEM Symposium on Saturday, and yes, it was fun to play with those spheres. My favorite magazine was Boys Life, and all of the science sections of Boys Life magazine when I was young. I read it more than my brother did. And Mechanics Illustrated. It was great to hear at the Al Costa breakfast with Medea the progress that's being made on the signature gathering for Schools and Communities First, and the passion that's involved in that. So if you have a need for any of the petition forms, please contact Medea or one of us, and we'll make sure that we can make it available for you. I enjoyed attending 3 of the budget hearings, though, and what's interesting is while there were a few questions that were common to all 3 sessions, each session also had some of its own unique questions, and the DLAC community particularly had some important questions. I learned today, because I have some friends that like being involved in videography, that CASBO now has some new short videos on the budget process and California school finance. So if you're interested in looking at those, please check them out, and I think that they may be informative to our communities, and perhaps our PTAs and PTOs can share them with families as well. We always need more information about the California finance system for public schools because it is complicated. The one thing I do want to share is that the Mount Diablo Council of PTAs is having a meeting on March 4th at 7 p.m. Dr. Martinez will present on the budget to our PTAs, as well as we'll have an organization there from that's called BeSmartForKids.org, and the effort of this group is the campaign to reduce child gun deaths. So SMART stands for Secure All Guns in Your Homes and Vehicles, M stands for model responsible behavior around guns. A stands for ask about the presence of unsecured guns in other homes. R stands for recognize the role of guns in suicide. And T stands for tell your peers to be smart. So this is an exciting program, and we're hoping that our PTAs and perhaps other groups would also share this information with their communities, because we're seeing an increase in student deaths by gun within Contra Costa, and in particular within East County, and that's important. And the final presentation that will occur on Wednesday, March 4th, will be a presentation on the importance of the Census 2020 for our schools and our community services. Groups and parent groups that are not PTAs are welcome to attend for the presentations, and we would love to have you join us. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I don't have a single event to add that hasn't already been touched upon, so I'll just touch on some of the topics we've heard tonight and I consistently hear. One, I think our counselors who came tonight, and hearing from the students, I think it was a huge testament to the work that they do and how important they are. I think every member of the board believes that. I think every member of from the superintendent on down, staff recognizes the impact that they have. And so when we're asked, we have this very large reserve, where did it go? Well, part of it went to this board making the decision to bring back counselors. We felt it was important to do. We felt it was important to work towards class size reduction. We felt it was important to have elementary music. We felt it was important to provide athletics again and support for those programs, as well as many others. So we as a board could have maintained a large reserve and not provided services to our students. That was not what that money was intended for. It was intended to go to our students. In terms of the contract, I do not like to hear that it's being used to say that the reason we're in difficult financial situation is because of our employee agreements. I think that we have been asked for a very long time, why doesn't the board settle? Why doesn't the board just acquiesce to the asks of the various bargaining agreements? The bargaining units deserve those raises. And I think unquestionably they did. I've said publicly that I do not think that what we've settled on is adequate. I don't think it keeps pace with inflation. It does not keep pace with the cost of living. But I think our bargaining agreements, as well as the board, recognized it was at the outer limits of what we could afford financially, and we had to come to a reasonable agreement. And this board has also consistently said, in order to afford these things, we are going to have to look at cuts. That is the difficult position we are in today. But I've yet to meet a person who says there is a teacher, there is a counselor, there is a custodian at Mount Diablo who is overpaid. And so at the very, I think this was the very minimum that we could do. But in order to do it, there are hard choices. We need to look, absolutely, I think there's universal agreement. We want to keep cuts as far away from the classroom as possible. Universal agreement about that. But what does that mean? What does that entail? Because we hear all the things, everyone says we don't want to cut, but we have to make the hard choices of what are the things we can cut. And there are limits to that. And there also needs to be a recognition that our staff that is not in the classroom helps enable those people to be in a classroom, that we have critical functions such as HR and payroll that we need to support in service of the people who are in the classroom. So that's why we're in a difficult position. I think we as a board want to make sure that we do not overcut, and that we also don't, we're looking for kind of that Goldilocks of, we want to be right where we need to be, because if we overcut, that has impacts, and if we undercut, well, that can put us in a very difficult situation regarding the county, our certifications, and many other things that may require more drastic cuts down the road. And so that's what we don't want to do. So this is a difficult process. We knew it was coming, but it's one we have to go through. And so I think it's incredibly important that we continue to hear from the community. I do have the same question, and we'll be touching on it shortly, of what is the actual deficit, because we know we have vacancies. We know we have funding that will come from the state. We know we have things such as carryover. And so to understand what is the true number that we need to cut. And I think that staff has been working incredibly hard to help us identify that, but that's the process that we need to go through. So with that concludes my comments, and I will go ahead and turn it over to the superintendent for his report. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Board President Lawrence. One of the things that I wanted to speak on tonight, which is not the budget, but it's also a very important process, and I wrote about it in my Friday letter. And I think it's important that we continue our educational conversations at the same time we're talking about budget redesign and right-sizing our district and ensuring that we have dollars in the right spaces for our students. The work that we're going to be doing is in conjunction with the California Collaborative for Educational Excellence, which is an organization which is a wing of the California Department of Education. We're also going to be working with the Contra Costa County Office of Education. And the reason behind this, again, I've stated it a few times, is that when our data is reviewed as a district by and on the California dashboard, we have not made significant increases to several of our populations of students. This would include our students who happen to be categorized as homeless or identified as foster youth or identified as African American students. The dashboard data is showing that we have not made significant gains for 3 of the past 4 years. Now, this is the data, and oftentimes, again, and I'd be one of the first ones to talk about students should not just be identified by a number, a data point, what have you, because it's such a qualitative experience to grow children in our educational systems. And yet, we are reviewed for the sake of how we're doing collectively with groups of students. What's not lost upon us is that also our English learners, our Hispanic students, our students with economic disadvantages, our students with disabilities and exceptional needs are also populations of students where we are not crushing it right now. So what we're doing is work really guided by working with the state, working with the county, and working with our own administrators to ensure that we are taking a systemic instructional review on many areas. Again, I wrote about them just briefly in the Friday letter, but those areas are culture, practice, and planning processes, curriculum development and support, instructional practice and strategies, social emotional learning and health development, assessment and accountability, family and student engagement, instructional leadership team, administrative coaching and leadership, professional learning and coaching, data management and student information systems, district and leadership capacity, and our governance. This is work that should not be just myself and our executive cabinet or even our cabinet. And so one of the first things I did was invited 8 of our principals and asked them, bring a teacher leader with you to this meeting of folks who are going to be doing the work with us. And I think it was a very productive start for us to meet the team, to start these conversations. And again, we have to have an organic process that is inclusive of our educators to get this work done for our students. And so we are moving forward with this process. We will have, in essence, an in-depth analysis with interviews, with some data gathering. We've already started gathering artifacts about what our district has been doing. Because if there's things that are working well for our schools, we want to get more of that. And if there are systems, sometimes it'll be a little bit of the budget consideration, or if it's something that we've tried, but we're not getting the results for our students, we have to think deeply about, is that the right thing to continue, or how do we need to modify with a specific review and action plans that we're actually looking to be successful. So, as well as, yes, we spend a lot of time on our budget, really the success of our students is going to come through a lot of work of engaging with our educators and our administrators and our community about what our schools are providing all of our students.
So that is the deep dive work that we'll be doing, but I thought it important just to share that with you, that while we're looking at budget, we really need to be focused on where we need to put the budget that we will have after these reductions are in place to make sure we're getting the best benefit for our students. So again, a lot of events, a lot of things happening, but I wanted to share that. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Martinez. With that, we're going to move along to the consent agenda. So items listed under consent are considered routine and will be approved by a single motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items. However, any item may be removed from the consent agenda upon the request of any member of the board and acted upon separately. So I open it to the board to ask, are there any items that they would like pulled from the consent agenda? First. All right. So with that, then I will consider a motion to approve the consent agenda as adopted, as presented.
Mr. President, I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
I'll second that.
Motion by Ms. Count, second by Ms. Mason. Starting with Ms. Durkee.
Yes?
Ms. Mayo.
Yes.
Ms. Count.
Yes.
Ms. Mason.
Yes?
And I vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0. With that, we will move along to business items. And Dr. Martinez, do we have anything from the business items that is being pulled?
Yes, we're actually pulling item 17.3. We'll be bringing that back with some more information added at a future time.
Okay, so item 17.3 will be pulled. 17.3 is what I show?
Correct.
17.3 is being pulled by staff, and we will update the agenda to reflect that. So we'll start with item 17.1, 2018 Measure J Audit Report for fiscal year ending June 30th, 2019. Do we have a presentation or any?
So there's no formal presentation. The information is provided for review. The staff is here if there are specific questions that are present on this audit.
Do we have any comment cards on this item? No, we do not have any comment cards. Do I have any questions from board members? All right, then we'll move along to item 17.2, which is the 2010 Measure C Audit Report for fiscal year ending June 30th, 2019.
And if I could, I believe there's a review and accept. So I think we have to take an action to accept that. Is that correct, Mika? I'm looking. No, we don't have to. All right, just making sure. Thank you.
So we no longer have to approve or adopt the bond measure audits?
Is it just on information for this meeting and action for
Action the next meeting.
Is that correct? Mika, Lisa, it'll be coming back for approval, or is it just information and that's all?
So we've been informed that with all of our audit reports, the board receives them, they do not approve them. They acknowledge that they receive them by putting it here on the agenda. So we've been told that they do not need actions.
And is that Mr.
So we've been doing it wrong all these years?
Well, and that's what our auditor let us know also.
And Mr. Alvarado, would you be able to follow up on that as well? I can check on that.
Perfect, thank you.
So we'll regard this as information on
And
these
if
two.
we need to bring it back, we'll bring it back.
Bring it back as action if needed in 2 weeks' time. Great, thank you. So now we have the review and potential, the review of the Measure C audit report for fiscal year ending June 30th, 2019. So any questions from the board on that before we move along? All right, so we will, was there?
It was good to see that there were no matters reported.
Yes.
Right.
No news.
And kudos for all the work that's been accomplished.
And so we will move along to item 17.4.3 was pulled, and so review and approve a developer fee justification study by Cooperative Strategies LLC. And prior to a motion, Dr. Martinez, do we have some context around that one?
Again, on this particular item, it's in essence a study that would be accomplished working with Cooperative Strategies LLC to again identify the levels of developer fees that we would potentially engage in should there be additional development in the process. It's a pretty standard process.
Great. Do I have a motion?
Comment. Do you want the motion first?
I'll take the comment.
Don't forget City of Pittsburgh, because they're building in our school district. So I think we're not talking to them, and we need to.
Any other comments or questions? All right, I'll entertain a motion.
I would make a motion to approve the use of Cooperative Strategies LLC to complete a developer fee justification study.
Second.
All right. Motion by Ms. Mason, second by Ms. Durkee. And we'll start with Ms. Mason.
Yes?
Ms. Count?
Yes.
Ms. Mayo?
Yes.
Ms. Durkee?
Yes.
I also vote yes. Motion passes 5-0. And now we are on to 17.5, budget update and potential areas for reduction. We have 6 comment cards. Are any of those speakers wishing to speak before the presentation? Otherwise, I will take the speaker cards afterwards. Mr. Reynolds, so would you like to speak before the presentation?
Yes, I would.
Okay, then we will have you come on up. Any of the other speakers wishing to? Mr. Langley? Okay, so Mr. Reynolds followed by Mr. Langley.
Thank you. We heard some things earlier in public comment about potential budget cuts. We heard things in the board's comments this evening about them as well. Thank you, Brian, for acknowledging that the contracts did not cause the budget problem. I would encourage the board to ensure that your staff know that and that they stop speaking in the opposite. Y'all are having conversations about potential cuts. 3 weeks ago, y'all asked admin, certificated staff, classified staff, students, parents, and other interested parties for their input in a survey about this process. They shared their input. When you count individual suggestions, more than 1,000 comments were presented to y'all about reductions. And at your meeting 2 weeks ago, you were presented with a tiered list of potential reductions. That list was presented y'all, it was presented to you as based on community input. That list that you saw was not representative of the survey input. I sat down and started to do a data analysis. The tiered list you have been shown, the only piece of data you all have been shown as the board about these potential cuts is not what was in those survey results. I imagine that you have read through some of those survey results and you have seen many of those 1,000 comments. The tiered list that was presented did not represent accurately those comments. When I read the list presented under admin council reductions, it matched up by more than 90%. When I read the other constituency lists, they did not come anywhere near that number. It appears to me, as someone who has studied what you were presented with, that what you were given was what admin had as input, not the 1,000 other comments our community gave you. Please pay attention to those other pieces of input that you asked for and the community delivered. You haven't been given that here in this setting yet. We were also told that the tiering that was done in the list in the presentation that you saw 2 weeks ago was done by admin council, which means to my eyes, admin put together the list and admin put together the tiering. Further,
there are problems with what you were presented with because there are items on that list that no one anywhere in 1,000 comments encouraged you to cut. Whether or not I support them, things like West Ed was on the tiered list, didn't appear in any of the 1,000 comments. Neither did JRTC, not in any of the comments. Neither were athletic directors. Neither were parent liaisons, except for one comment out of 1,000 that said, please don't cut these people. So the list that you were given, and the only piece of data that you have seen thus far, is not accurate. What you're about to see tonight has some similar flaws. It continues to extol to you all the idea of a 17% reserve when the state requires a 3% reserve for a district of this size. Also, Anita Johnson said it earlier, Bill Clark, whose name has been bandied about and who showed up here to present to y'all, said using the unaudited actuals from last year is the best position for you to base your budget and multi-year projections on. If you do otherwise, you are overcutting by more than $10 million. Wish I had 3 more minutes, but I don't.
Thank you, Mr. Reynolds, and now we will hear from Mr. Langley.
Board members, staff, the audience. I wanted to get very specific about cuts and what we should keep and what we would cut. And I waited till 1 o'clock, actually 2:30, to see this presentation so that I could comment on the specifics, but it seemed a little general to me, so I'm afraid I'm going to have to speak in generalities. Forgive me. Educators affect eternity. That's on our shirts. We came up with this years ago because we wanted to say that it had meaning. On 17 May 1958, the Supreme Court shot down segregation in schools with Brown versus Board of Education. In reaction, some school districts closed schools to prevent educating black children at the same level as whites. In Virginia, 10,000 students were left without schools for over a year. In an extreme case, Prince Edward County closed all public schools from 1958 through 1963, but gave scholarships to any student who wanted to go to a private school. None of the private schools allowed black children, so they basically went without school for 5 years. An entire generation of students lost their education. Now, when this board makes cuts to school site-based, classified, and certificated professionals that educate our children, the pieces that you remove will be lost to a vast majority of our students. And it will not only affect them, but like any time you take away education, it will affect the generations. It will put holes in their education. Educators affect eternity. I can't give you ideas of where to separate what's absolutely necessary from what is unfortunately disposable, because I don't have the list that you have of all the possibilities. But remember, your cuts must consider educators, and that means classified and certificated, who are in the classroom and helping the students. You make the holes, they will not be filled. Thank you.
I have 4 other cards, but I am presuming that they would like to speak after the presentation. Is that correct? Okay, great. We will move along to the presentation then.
Good evening, President Lawrence, members of the board, Superintendent Martinez, members of the Executive Cabinet, as well as members of the audience who are here this evening. We're going to go ahead and we're going to take a look at the budget status, process, solutions, as well as moving forward with reductions. This evening's presentation is going to cover a number of topics. We're going to start with some of the history of the last 10 to 12 years or so with budget reductions, what was restored in recent years, because I think it's important to go back and take a look at some of this because it does add to the deficit spending that many have talked about. We'll go ahead and cover that. We're going to take a look at the current budget and why we need budget solutions, why deficit spending really occurred, taking a look at spending shortfalls, the current process that we're taking a look at in the district, the timeline for certificated and classified layoffs, because that's really what is driving the sense of urgency, at least with some of the work that we're doing right now, the results of the thought exchange from last week, and then we're going to jump into a component about what is in our sphere of influence. And so if we take a look back at the 2009-2010 budget reductions, at that point in time, the board had to approve $30.6 million in 1 year of reductions. Their reductions at that point in time were pretty significant. We went back and we pulled those PowerPoints. A lot of management reductions, vice principals, program specialists, class sizes went up to contractual limits, librarians, school closures, all of the parent subsidized transportation that existed at the time, it no longer exists, that never came back. Custodians, school site budgets, materials and supplies, and then there was a specific cap in certain groups for health care costs that was fairly unique to that situation. This past year, the board had approved $3.55 million in ongoing reductions. That started with vacancies that were intended to not be filled. What we did find out in that process, not only was it administrators and teachers, we'd anticipated that that was going to be about a $2.9 million savings. What we realized starting this school year, and for those of us that are sort of picking up the pieces and trying to put them back together, that many of those positions that were intended to be eliminated last year were not fully realized. Summer school programs were eliminated for TK through 8 students. This is everything that is not required beyond extended school year. A lot of the outside contracts, we looked at savings there of $100,000. Cell phone stipends were reduced and food for meetings. So it was kind of sort of some of that low-hanging fruit, if you will, with some of those pieces. But at this point in time, let's take a look at the deficit spending and really what's been restored, because there really was some intentional deficit spending with some of the reserves that we had, so spending down those reserves. We had raises for staff. We brought back counselors. I won't go through and read all of them, but we brought back middle and high school sports programs. We had coaches. We offered additional hours for support for students, music programs, magnets, expanded programs, online learning assessments. We had a lot of investments in school sites that were beyond our bond measures. Increased medical benefits, and then some of the previously eliminated administrative positions were brought back. So what has contributed to our current deficit issues? We've covered this in a number of board meetings. We've covered this at all of our forums. For anybody who's a member of the public who is listening, all of this information is available on our website under budget solutions. But just to bring us up to speed, we have a cost of living adjustment that is not really covering the cost of living. We have increased CalSTRS and CalPERS contributions. So even though all of our employees pay into the retirement system, the district portion of that has increased. We've had year-over-year deficit spending. We are one of at least 50 to 60% of the districts in the state that are declining enrollment. As a matter of fact, since the 2010-11 school year, we've lost close to 3,400 students. And then a tentative agreement with all of our bargaining groups is part of where we are today. I know that this number was raised. We've continued to use this. The Governmental Finance Officers Association makes a recommendation of 17%, as we've said at all of our community forums so far. We share this information. This is a recommendation. We are nowhere close to this. As a matter of fact, in a district of our size, it becomes very difficult to try to have reserves that look anything like this. But what is important to take a look at is that very bottom line there, when we're at 3.11% and we are required by education code to have 3%. So we're really, really close to that threshold at this point, but we've never really suggested going certainly anywhere close to 17%. What's important to note down here in revenues and expenditures, you've seen this slide before. I know there's been some questions on the drop from the 18-19 to the 19-20, the 18-19 to the 19-20 school year. And while you're seeing a drop there, what you actually need to take a look at is that there was a significant increase between 17-18 to 18-19. And I want to share just a little bit about that. That increase came mostly from one-time state revenue. So I've got a number of pieces that I'd like to share here. We had a $5 million from Governor's one-time funds. We had a $2 million CT grant that came in at one time. We had $1 million extra lottery funds that came in that year. We had $3 million in local revenue, and a lot of these are items that we cannot put into a budget because we don't know if they are going to happen. For example, some of the use permits with our facilities and certainly parent donations. So we can't assume that in a given year, because we've seen these come before, we can have them come forward again. We're not able to account for those unless we've got some type of documentation that shows that those things are coming in. We received an additional $500,000 that one year for ACES funding. ACES is our after-school grant. We had a $500,000 prior year adjustment for special education, so that contributed. We also had in that 1 year, 18-19, again, this is why we had the big jump, we had a one-time low-performing block grant that came in at $2.155 million. So it's important to really take a look at that piece, because when you look at it in comparison to other years, it looks like there was a reduction in 19-20, but you know, it was one of those years in 18-19 where we were on clearly someone's gift list, because there's a lot of money that came our direction that we weren't looking for. So what is the bottom line right now? So I think if I had to go back and could edit this slide right now, what I would change in it is I would say that the $21.1 million, which was updated late last week, is not necessarily reductions, they're budget solutions. So I apologize that on that slide it says reductions, because it really should be budget solutions. So what are we doing to address the budget solutions? We are looking at all of the components that you see here on the slide. We are eliminating as many unfilled vacancies as we possibly can. We continue to look at this. As a matter of fact, you just approved some this evening. We went through earlier today and we made some pretty significant reductions in many of our district budgets. This is something where we asked all of the departments to bring us forward recommendations, and then we went through and we cut even further. We are continuing to move expenses when possible from unrestricted to restricted. The reason that we do that for community members that may be listening is because we want to make sure that the money that has the most strings attached to it is the money that we spend first, because it's the money that we have the least amount of flexibility with. And so we're continuing to do that. We've had board action on reduced positions, and we'll continue to do that. And then the most important piece here is really this Civic Center Act. We are taking a look at every single contract. We spent about 2.5 hours this morning working on all that. We're going to make sure and have a fiduciary responsibility to ensure that our facilities, whether you are Group A or Group B or Group C, you're going to be charged the same exact amount based on the actual cost, which means if you've got custodial and you need that, you're going to be charged for the appropriate amount of custodial. If it's something that's requiring a lot of utility use, that's going to be covered as well. So we're going back and we are taking a look and we are renegotiating contracts wherever possible to address the Civic Center Act. But our big piece is this: if we wait until next year to make cuts, we'll have deeper cuts, and we will move from positive to qualified or even possibly to negative. And that's why we're taking a look at all of these right now, because we're waiting for our second interim numbers, but as we're planning forward, what we're seeing and what the county office is verifying is that if we don't make the bulk of these cuts right now in our second and third year out, we're going negative. You've all seen this slide. I'm going to go ahead and just review this one as well as the ones that follow it. There are typically 5 ways that you look at budget solutions. You take a look at the reserves. Again, our reserves were required to have 3%. We're sitting at 3.11% right now for this current year, and so we've really run out of that option. The next option that we take a look at is reductions and cuts. 89% of our budget is things, individuals who eat and breathe, which means that the staff costs are really critical for us to take a look at. We're, again, significantly reducing spending in departments. We're taking a look at every purchase order that comes through. As a matter of fact, sometimes, we're taking a look at, 2 or 3 of us are taking a look. We just took a look at one today and said, is this really something that a school site should be paying for? And we went back and looked at some of their plans and what they were doing for PBIS. But we are monitoring all of our purchases, and we've significantly curtailed conferences, professional development, and contracts wherever possible. It really is important to note that a lot of the contracts that we're putting forward right now are because we have vacancies and the work still needs to get done. And so we're really trying to work hard with our Human Resources Department to make sure that we're getting positions posted, that we're trying to make sure that in our screening we've got the best, most qualified people coming in to interview, and that we're really making smart decisions when it comes to selecting staff. Funding shifts. We are taking a look at different funding structures. Not a day goes by, I've said this before, where we're not in communication with the county office. 2 calls today with our auditor. We've got a couple of calls into the Department of Education. We're trying to get as creative as possible for things that we might be able to build back to certain departments or certain programs. We are moving as much as we can into our restricted budgets if we do have that ability. And I always put this last bullet here, put off any significant expenditures. We really don't have anything like that, but if we had a textbook adoption cycle, we could look at kicking textbooks down the road a year or 2. We don't have a reserve for that. We don't have a reserve for technology refresh. Those are the types of things that we would be able to put off if we had anything in that category, but we don't. Investments, again, we are looking for ways to increase district revenue. We are taking a look at attendance and the importance of having students in school. I think that what we really learned from the community forums is that there are a lot of parents who don't understand what ADA, average daily attendance, means, or the fact that when your child is not in school, you don't get the revenue for that day. Yet 100% of your people costs continue for that year, whether the students are there or not. We're taking a look at risk management, facility utilization, optimization, specialty programs, grants, partnerships, and again, the Civic Center Act that I mentioned before. When it comes to advocacy, I know that many of you have spoken on some of the topics that are out there right now. I know that many have weighed in at our community forums. There have been petitions going around for potential propositions. Would you like to jump in?
Oh, sorry. Just the petitions are for schools and communities first, because our board has endorsed the measure and our teachers are leading the way with the signature gathering. I believe PTA also statewide endorsed, so that's another place people can find those.
And of course, the water goes down the wrong way. The process that we're using to identify budget solutions. Everything that is in bold is what we're continuing to take a look at. There are some revisions to this. There will be no board action tonight because we are not bringing any recommendations forward. We are continuing to work on those pieces. So our biggest concern is that we want to make sure that if we're looking at $21.1 million, that internally we are making as many budget moves as we possibly can, that we're trying to be as smart as we possibly can before putting out any lists that could raise any alarm in any of our members, of our staff, of our community, and we're not to the point of being able to share those at this time. But one of the things that we are continuing to do is meet with our bargaining groups. We will be meeting again on Wednesday morning to discuss this presentation, to respond to any questions that they have. We're also being mindful of the fact that every time we're looking at possible solutions, we're looking at what the impact is to students and we're looking at what the impact is to other staff. So for example, if we're looking at eliminating a position, We want to know very clearly, what could that do to students? Is there a direct or indirect impact on that? And then what happens with other staff members? Because if you remove a position, there is some work there that still needs to be done. So what happens to that work, and how can you complete it? And if there are things that are not going to be completed moving forward, how do we communicate that to those that work in our schools and those that send their children to our schools? Because I think those are really big questions. Every time you sort of make a move, there are 3 other things that you need to think about, and that's why we're really taking a look at these carefully. We are up against a timeline where certificated layoffs. This is a slide that I think most of us are pretty familiar with if we have been site administrators. Teachers are always familiar with this, our counselors as well. March 15th is the deadline for anyone who might have their position eliminated or might not be back the following year. That's when they have to receive that notice, which means that the board has to make actions before that time. As opposed to the classified layoff schedule that has changed in the last 10 years, where it used to be you could give a 30-day notice and then it moved up to 45, and now it is a 60-day notice. So we have a little bit more time with our classified staff, but certainly we don't want to wait till the very last minute, because we do want to be respectful to those individuals who may not be back with us, so they have the opportunity to find jobs in other places.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Going back 2 slides, so to certificated. So we have our meeting on March 2nd, a special meeting. But we also have March 9th as our regularly scheduled.
Correct.
We've come up against the timeline, and I think there's the balance of wanting to be respectful and make sure that we give people time, but at the same time making sure we don't cut too hastily or things like that. So can we touch upon, and partly a question for you, Dr. Martinez, what needs to be done March 2nd, what can be done March 9th, and how do we balance those?
So what we're planning on doing is looking at, again, we know that there's going to be some very specific data that'll be posted as part of the special board meeting. There will be, again, dollar amounts connected to different areas of certificated positions. We are mindful that our classified positions, there's still some very significant work that we need to do, and we have a little bit of time for noticing. On March 2nd, we do anticipate that there will be a resolution calling for certificated positions, which would include administrative positions, and really, again, certificated administrative positions, and any of the positions that we've identified right now of individuals who hold credentials. So that on March 2nd would be the initial blush, so that we can see the larger level of reductions that we need. That sometimes can be changed, of course, because as we receive information about individuals who may resign, may retire, may leave the district for whatever purposes, again, looking at the level of folks that we have in the positions that they hold, whether they're temporary employees or, again, what have you. So the first blush will probably be the biggest certificated PKS. What we're holding, and we just, given the intricacies and the care that we want to take, we felt it important to do that on March 2nd, again, after the analysis, and because it gives us the authority to direct staff. What I want to be clear on is that the March 2nd PKS, which is a particular kinds of service which is included there, it doesn't mean that it's final. It basically gives direction to staff to say, if this has to come to fruition in May, after the review of the continuing in-depth review of our budget and the realization that we really will not have these people come back, there's a lot of steps that are in between the March notice and the May notice. This gives our Human Resources Department, again, working with our legal and working, quite frankly, with Medea, on the sense of ensuring seniority is accurate, that we have an appropriate process, and people are receiving that preliminary notice in a timely manner. It so happens that this date of March 15th is again on a weekend this year. So we actually lose 2 days. The date is March 13th. If in fact we wait until March 9th to give direction to our human resources, it's a very short window to prepare the notices, the preliminary notices and get those out to everybody. So again, while I understand that folks are feeling that, well, we don't have some information to make some decisions, we do have a pretty good idea about some of those particular services that we will have out there. And again, when you get to next Monday and you're seeing all the information, we trust that you'll see some of the specific areas, and again, give us the authority to direct human resources to go through the process. I know it's a lot more than maybe you asked for, but it's a very in-depth process.
I think the context is very important.
Chair, although I would say ultimately it's our decision, and I think it, at least for me, if I don't think I have the information I need come March 2nd, then we can have a special meeting every day until I have the information I need to make an educated decision for myself. That's what I would say.
Which is why we're going to be working very hard to make sure that when we give it to you, we have all those pieces in place. We're confident with the numbers. We, as President Lawrence said, we don't want to say it's X if it's really C or D. We want to be really sure with all these numbers.
And so I certainly recognize that staff is continually working on this. The numbers change and things like that. But one thing I would ask of the board would be what their expectation would be for both for the board, for the public as well, to receive the information for the March 2nd meeting. What is, I just frankly don't think that 1 or 2 p.m. on Monday would allow sufficient time for that. So my question for both the board and staff would be, what would be, and to Ms. Mason's point, what would be our expectation on when that information would be published, recognizing that there may still be some changes, but for that to be shared with the public prior to the meeting. So I open that to the board.
You want someone to jump in here? I would think that we would want to publish it at least by 5 o'clock on Friday, if that was possible.
I think that's absolutely possible, if not earlier.
Is the rest of the board comfortable with that? And so obviously any earlier would be better, but as a absolute last timing would be by 5 p.m. on Friday. Thank you. Apologies for the setback,
okay.
But thank you.
So thought exchange. We put a question out to our community. We put this out at all of the forums. We had this sent out to all of our parents. And the big question was, what are the most important ways we can prepare students to be ready for college, career, and life? And a number of reasons we're doing this. First of all, in light of the fact that we are coming up with budget solutions, it really did make sense to go back to the really core question of why we're here. And we felt that that was the best way to really ask that question. This exchange closed on Friday, February 21st. It closed at 5 o'clock. At that point in time, there were 1,500 people who responded. There were 744 thoughts that were shared. And the way that Thought Exchange worked for those individuals that may not have done it is basically you go to a website, it collects no information other than the information that you put in, so no email addresses, no phone numbers, nothing. And you're able to put in a response to what are the most important ways. And you could type a comment and you could give a little bit of clarity to that. You could put in 1, you could put in 5, you could put in 10, and then it gets to the point where it says, now is your opportunity to rate or to star other people's comments, other people's thoughts. And so what happened was we had over 24,000 stars. So for example, if someone wrote, safe schools are very important, as a reviewer, which would be anybody that went to the Thought Exchange, you have the option of 5 stars, 5 being highest, 1 being lowest. I could say that was a 3. You might think it was a 5, you might think it was a 1. And it culls all of that information. And so what happened with that Thought Exchange is that these were the top 20 responses. So the top 20 responses range, and I will just go through all of these real quickly. Reduce district staff and put money into school staff, smaller class sizes, recruit and retain quality teachers, teach cognitive skills, high quality education, and that was defined, 3 counselors at each high school, resolve ongoing stressors in classes, engage in critical thinking, have diverse methods by which you reach students, and they did give some examples on that, smaller class sizes, focus on critical thinking, lifetime learners, keep class sizes manageable, empower teachers to remain on campus, support quality staff, standards of behavior, more classes geared toward the trades. This is, the focus on CTE or other professions. Safe learning environments at all schools, safe and supportive environments, and high quality classroom teaching. Which brings us, Dr. Martinez, to our look at budget solutions and our 3 buckets.
Correct. So one of the things that we've heard a little bit about, and we did, think afterwards, a little bit of armchair quarterbacking about the tiers component, that just unfortunately, as we were trying to race to give information about many of the different ideas, it didn't necessarily resonate with everybody because it was like, well, how did it get there? When did it get here? And a lot of data. And really it was designed to have a collective splatter, if you will, of every idea that we potentially could think of. It was not intended to just be specifically responsive to only the survey, because we were gathering ideas from administrative council, from parents, from our historical process. So there were things on there that we had already heard about as well, even from the board level, that were included there. In any case, when we're now trying to think about, again, the rest of our information, we are starting to think about how do we look at these solutions. And again, we've mentioned this comment about keeping things, away from the classroom as much as possible. And I understand that. And again, both the other comment is that, well, we're all here to help our education system grow. And again, all those different variety of services and supports at some point should be connected to the classroom as we think about our students and their needs and what do they need to be successful. In its simplest form, we think about the core components, our teachers, the people who are there the most out of the day working with our students in all the variety of programs. We can't exist without our teachers. It's just the way we have to do it. Some people might say, well, you don't need administrators, but again, working with our principals in the area of leadership and cohesiveness of a community, the educators, the teachers, the support staff, the parents, the students, somebody needs to be guiding that work, and so we really do feel that principle. And of course, 2 examples are our office support and our custodians. We need people managing the school and having an idea of what's happening today and why are we all here and are we keeping track of everybody and are we clean and safe. We've heard that over and over and over. So we think of those core components, not that these are the only 4 things. There's many others. And again, as we look at the different school sites and the needs they have, some of our students have significant levels of need that everybody would say that has to be there to meet those students' needs. That next bucket, if you will, that next slide, or the next slide here, is the must-haves. Well, we know that our special education students with 504 needs, they are general education students. First, we know that they are here, they support, we receive funding on their behalf, and yet we know that there's some things that they have to have. We are not going to go through not having psychologists who are available to do that assessment of the learning disabilities that children might have, and to coordinate and consult with teachers and their parents about creating environments that our students need. So there's some must-haves that are part of our process, even though some might say, well, why do we have all these psychologists? Well, legally we have to, and they're very important for, again, some of our students. And then we start thinking more broadly and extended about the wish-to-haves. And this is a challenge because, again, for each one of us who looks at schools, we think of our own history, we think of the things we've had, we think of the things we didn't have and what we would have loved to have been there for us, and maybe we'd have been a little bit more successful if this was there or that was there. And yet, when we think about the core and meeting all of our students' needs, there are some things that are very unique to smaller populations of students, and we have to be able to identify those things, or those things that we might think of a particular, and boy, I'm not going to say this, but I think I am, any kind of particular, music theory that I need to have music theory and learn about 1800th jazz, or, I don't know if that even exists, so that's why I made it up. But it's something unique that, well, we're not going to have 30,000 kids say, well, I've got to have that. And 30,000, students and their parents say, well, we've got to have that. That may be a wish to have, be a lovely thing. So now when we start thinking about, again, the decisions, we also need to think about those decision-making capabilities that are in our sphere of influence. And there are some things, and we've kind of hit on some of these, that we just can't simply say, well, we demand more cost of living adjustment. Just give us more money and go pick it up from Washington or Sacramento. We can't just decide not to pay our STRs and PERS. That's something we are obligated to do. Again, there's several others here. Independently, just reduce our health costs for our employees. No, we made a commitment to that a while back, and so those things would take some renegotiating, really significant things. So we can't just make some of those changes. And again, I know this idea that somehow got out there thinking that we were suggesting at some point, well, maybe we should close schools. It's so difficult to do that, and takes a lot of thought and process in doing that. That is not something that we would just decide to do right now for our communities. But the things that are within our decision-making capabilities, and it gets back to, we can ensure that we're taking the steps to protect the district in the sense of providing preliminary notices. So that gets to our reductions in force. And, it does fall towards individuals with credentials, administrative credentials. Some teachers, counselors, coaches, librarians. There'll be classified administrators as well who may not be here as part of our process going forward. Clerical staff, custodial staff as well. Those are things that Ed Code really does provide us. Those are processes that we have to follow, and we have to do that. It's there for a reason, to protect districts and to have a way of reducing the staff, because we do not have the funds to cover everything. Again, and we've talked a little bit about our practices, again, reducing department and site budgets, and we did today. It's not easy to think, well, if we keep this money here, we could, but if we're not using it with a purposeful intent, we've had to pull some of those dollars back and rethink what we're doing with those to ensure the integrity of our budget. Redesigning services. And again, not to address any particular group, but we think about our mental health services for students and the social emotional learning needs that they have. And there's such a wide variety of ways that we are doing that in our district, which is phenomenal. And at the same time, we need to make sure that our system is aligned and complementary, so that all of the different folks who are working in that arena really are working together with some unifying process. And so we have to really make sure our system is designed, not just that everybody can keep doing what they're doing and we won't have any changes, but that everybody who's working here on behalf of our students in these arenas are working together in sync. And so that's a challenge that isn't necessarily a budget decision, but that's a directional decision for our program. So we need to work on that as well. We've talked about the Civic Center Act and really using appropriate budget strategies for the future. And I say that because, again, I know that our fiscal services folks have been working like nobody's business in the sense of working for clarity in our process. But we also need to be thoughtful about always where the budget is going next year. And we've talked about advocacy, but we have to live within our means and live within our reserve to do that. So our practices in tracking the dollars on behalf of the students also need to be on point all the time. So again, I know that some people would have loved to have seen a list of every single thing tonight, but as Lisa had says, we really want to be very clear, and we've worked to identify the issue in a very fast process, but we wanted to make sure before we get to that public array of potential reductions that we're really ensured that what we're presenting is the accurate information, so our board can have that transparency to make appropriate decisions.
So now we would launch into board discussion. So what I'll do is I'll just put this slide back up and.
So prior to doing that, so one, a mystery has been solved. So we had 4 cards from our counselors, which were here on item 17.5, but we had them speak under public comment. So hence the 4 mystery cards. And then I do have a comment card from Anita Johnson. So Anita, would you like to come up, please?
Thank you. I am really worried. I can read between the lines, and I can tell where this is going is that if you guys have to vote on the PKS list, how many people you're going to give pink slips to before you talk about the reductions, then that's going to mean hundreds of pink slips. Because if you might cut counselors, you got to pink slip all the counselors. If you might cut librarians, you have to pink slip all the librarians. It's just a backwards way to do it, and it's going to cause incredible amount of anxiety for an incredible number of people. And there's going to be people who are going to leave this district and not come back because of the way they were treated. We know that this happens over and over again. I thought that we had gotten out of this in this district, but years ago it was tradition to pink slip hundreds of people every spring just because you might need to let them go. And it's just not the way to treat people. It's not the way to keep people. And I know that there's a huge time crunch here, but I just implore you not to take that route. It's putting the cart before the horse, and it's just not the way to treat people. You know, I acknowledge that Lisa Gonzalez has only been here for 5 weeks. She's working really, really long hours to learn her job. She has walked into a complex process. And I know that she doesn't want to make a mistake and put out the wrong recommendations. But we just need recommendations. We need the budget cuts decided before the PKS list. That's why I was just so shocked that there are no recommendations here. And I really need to clarify, Brian, thank you for taking the leadership on something's going to be available at 5 o'clock on Friday, but I need to know what that is. Is that the PKS list recommendation? Is that the recommendations for cuts and how much each one's worth? I hope that it's both. I hope both of them are available by 5 o'clock on Wednesday, because you guys need time to analyze it and you need time to get input from people. Just a couple of other comments that I wanted to make on the presentation. You know, it's great that you were shown what the board had to cut in 2009. It distresses me that the leading thing was that in 2009 the board cut management. It's true, there were some management positions that were eliminated, but dozens and dozens of credentialed people, certificated people, classified people lost their jobs that year. And it was a much, much higher proportion than management. And then to say that part of the reason that the district is deficit spending is because those management positions were reinstated is actually not the complete truth. This district has added positions to management that never existed before, especially in the fiscal department. And they're new positions, and it's part of the reason for the deficit. I acknowledge that this board voted to spend down that big reserve and brought back our benefits. Kudos, fabulous. And there were other things. The counselors were brought back. That was fabulous. But we all need to acknowledge that there have been positions added to Dent Center top management that weren't here in 2009. And I just think we really need to look at that carefully. Just also wanted to comment that this whole thought exchange process, I don't think added anything. It didn't fit in budget reduction. You saw the list, it was things to add. I love that when asked that question, most people said smaller class sizes. And I would ask you guys for smaller classes. I think I have asked for smaller class sizes, right? But that's not helping with the budget process. And I also really question this big focus on the Civic Center Act. I hope that's not a red herring. I hope we can save $10 million doing that or generate revenue of $10 million, but I just hope that we're not spending a whole lot of time chasing pennies on that one.
Sorry, Anita, I forgot to start the timer, so if you can finish your thought.
Let's see here. Yeah, if you guys could just really clarify what's going to be available at 5 o'clock on Friday, so that when we start checking it, we're not disappointed just as, that it's not what because we need the PKS list hopefully by Wednesday. We need the budget recommendations with dollar amounts hopefully by Wednesday. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, so, Dr. Martinez, could we get clarification on what it is that we will have? And I would leave to the board. I would ask for, I know this pushes the time frame for it, but I'd ask for 5 p.m. on Thursday, so that we at least have then Friday where we have a business day prior to Monday. So if possible, and I recognize that there would still be changes, but my request would be Thursday.
So what I would say would be, I believe we can get something up on Thursday that would be the first flush draft of the cuts, the PKS, because again, depending on where the cuts would be, we really need the critical time to have that reviewed before that goes out there. We can work to see if we can get both documents up on Thursday. But again, I would respectfully ask for Friday on that at least, and then we'd have the full agenda posted on Friday. Again, if we get it done sooner, we'll absolutely put it up there, but I don't want to have an unreal expectation and then we're still needing that extra 24 hours.
I think certainly staff needs the time that they need to get it right, and to echo Ms. Mason's comment, the board needs the time they need to get it right, and so if it results in us needing to do an additional meeting, or I would say so be it, because frankly, there's nothing more important than us doing this, and there are going to be people who are hurt by this process. This impacts people's lives. This impacts people's livelihoods. And so we want to be as thoughtful as possible on this. And so I think it just, whatever it takes for us to do this in the best manner possible. Other board discussion on the presentation questions?
I have a few questions. One is on the reviewing the Facility Use Civic Center Act. Is that an item that's feasible within the time frame for next school year to figure that out? Yes. Okay.
We're looking at having that updated, and well, actually, we're going to start renegotiating contracts probably within the next month. We really want to have some solid numbers within the next month, because anybody who's starting to use our facilities, even starting beginning of June, we want to make sure that everybody is being properly charged by then, if not sooner.
So that's not something we would have in the next few days kind of thing?
No,
for this list.
No.
But before the May final decisions on people's positions, we would have it before then.
Correct.
So, may I intercede and ask a question? What about our PTAs and PTOs and athletic boosters that use our facilities? They are not, while we tell PTAs they are a business, a nonprofit business, they do contribute greatly to our school sites, and we have some of those groups that are sort of caught in the middle because their schools don't get a lot of Title I funding, etc., and they're not in the high wealth areas. So they are struggling currently to hold parent meetings with more than 20 people in attendance where they are being charged. And then the charge isn't necessarily exorbitant, but for me as a person that has promoted parent engagement, that becomes a barrier. At one point in time, I attended PTA meetings in Richmond in churches because they couldn't afford, or there wasn't a location for PTA meetings or PTO. It can be applied to both. So as we're going through this process of reviewing it, can you give me any insight how those groups may be treated?
I don't think we're looking at treating them any differently than they have been before. As a matter of fact, if there are opportunities to not have some of those charges, I think, it's one thing to be a school-associated organization. It's another to be a nonprofit in the community that's running a for-profit program on our school sites. And I think that's where we're really taking a look at the differential. We're also taking a look at, other things that we're hearing about use at school sites that, we're not seeing use fees, we're not seeing permits.
We're being pulled.
We go out to school sites and we realize that there are entire groups that are out there, and who are they? And so it's a lot of those bigger pieces. Another really good example is, there's one contract that we pulled earlier today, and when we took a look at it, we realized that in the last 4 years, the utilities hadn't been updated, the custodial charges hadn't been updated. So those are the pieces that we need to have some level of consistency with. We know that 4 and 5 years ago, custodial costs were not what they are today. And so when we've got outside organizations, larger outside organizations that are coming in and using facilities, they should be charged the actual price of the custodial.
So I know that the act says you need to be fair across the board, but can you differentiate between a school organization versus outside organization?
Yes, you can. With that said, I don't think we're also going to give carte blanche to organizations that are at our school sites that are running summer camps, if you will, right? That are charging a lot of.
Right. That would be an outside organization.
Well, we have some within the district who aren't being charged for those facility uses either, and yes, there's a lot of things that we're finding out that we're taking a look at.
Yeah, as a parent now, I'm thinking about, what about the Girl Scout troop? Is that considered a school group?
They are a school organization.
One other question was, you talked about if the challenge of if we move from positive to qualified or negative. I know that's been explained at prior meetings, but I feel like that's really relevant again to explain to the community. A number of districts across the state have moved to qualified, and I feel like in some ways, that's something that the state looks at when they're, determining what's going on with our schools and how are they doing. And so that could be a signal to them, but on the other hand, there's a downside to us to be in the position of being qualified. Can you speak to what the downsides are, or like why we would not want to move to qualified status? Clearly, we don't want to be in negative status.
Well, again, going back to qualified or negative, what you're saying is that we may not be able to pay our bills in the next 2 out years, or we will not be able to pay our bills in the next 2 out years. And so, again, some people think, well, if we become, qualified or negative, then it may trigger additional assistance from the state. Sometimes it may trigger an additional support through FCMAT, Fiscal Crisis Management Assessment Team, or Assistance Team. However, that's not an immediate fix for us. It really is another review of all of our systems, which in essence we're doing right now with the county office, quite frankly. So we're kind of ahead of the curve looking at some of those things right now that might be triggered by that. The other concern is that when you do become qualified and or negative, your rating for bonds and the dollars that you can actually borrow money for is significantly impaired. And so that's another significant concern, that if in fact we can make the adjustments and we have some time to do it, because again, we can't pay our bills right now for this school year. We need to work on our budget development to make sure that we can continue to pay our bills for the next 2 out years. And again, as soon as July comes, we have another year to start thinking about. So it really is a process by which we have to look ahead, and we'd rather take care of our problems as we understand them right now, without ignoring them and then being in a worse situation.
So I start with more general and then go to more specific, but I guess I'm just so kind of angry and frustrated that we're even in this position, and unfortunately, it's the whole circle the wagons and shoot each other mentality that comes out, that we have a basic across the country, across California problem with not having enough funding for education. And if you think back over the years, I mean, you know, at any point in time, you could say, oh, well, we have too many of these, or we don't have enough of those, or whatever. But, you know, if you go back long enough, you can create a picture of, you know, when we had more or less, and, you know, a lot of, I mean, think about now how interesting it was how many years ago where the teachers union gave up the medical benefits. I mean, like now, it's like, how nuts is that, you know? Well, it made sense to some folks at the time, and it took forever to dig out of that hole, you know, and it sort of had impact, talk about impacting students, that had a major impact on students. So, you know, we were, Mr. Lawrence talked about, we were enjoying getting through the recession, the state was starting to pay back, you know, what was owed to schools, and shame on us for getting excited and spending the money, you know, on things like counselors. I remember I was here when counselors were eliminated, and that's another, like, who would have thought you could get to that, but we survived for a number of years, and so it's kind of just so crazy making in general to be even having these conversations. But I wanted to say, I feel strongly, and that I can say with great confidence, that everything is being looked at. And, you know, it's always easy to point over there. You know, you could just tell from people talking about what they do at an elementary site or a high school. Everybody does everything, right? I mean, there's a point where I wonder if, like, job descriptions, you know, people don't just stay within their job. They do what the kids need in that moment in time. Everybody does it. Everybody steps up. And so, you know, it's about having enough adults on site to meet the needs of students. I also think we are in an era where there are increasing, I think it's a combination of increasing awareness among the adults about student needs and children's needs. I also think that we have more and more children who come to us traumatized, you know, deficit in a whole lot of ways, and have a lot more needs that get in the way of their learning. So that's a reality. And so I really do appreciate what Dr. Martinez is talking about, simultaneously trying to figure out what's the best structure and systems. We are in a different era now with different children's needs, and the traditional roles and the traditional practice of how schools are organized may just not be working anymore, and we have less money to do it. So how do we do all that? So I'm just encouraging everybody. It's bottom line. It's funding. It's a criminal that this state, you know, is where we are in per pupil funding compared to the rest of the country. It's absolutely criminal. I mean, the 5th largest economy in the world, and this is how we're treating public education. And anyway, and then the money, the resources that get taken away because you're being pointed out, well, you're not doing a good enough job, and it's like, you know, it's just such a contradiction. So we all need to be standing up loudly saying it's time to better fund our public education. Public education is the heart of our democracy, it's heart of everything, and all students deserve a good education. Something more, I do also want to underscore the importance of, so it was mentioned earlier that, you know, not all schools are the same or have the same needs, and not all children are the same. So to look, you know, use our equity lens always. So it's not just a formula, every school gets the exact same thing. We know the needs are different. There's schools, some schools have more parent support, and parents are able to, you know, finance things, and so I think it's only right that we look at that in an equitable way as well. And then also look at partnerships. We do a really good job, I think, in this district of partnerships, but maybe we need to be, you know, saying louder, stronger, we need more help. You know, there's certain pieces that outside organizations can provide. You know, so I think we just maybe need to be more vocal about that, and also get them to contact the legislators and have more funding for public education. And now I've mentioned this, I think, and maybe in an email, that the whole issue of what changed. Oh, I don't know that it's a change, but we were considered one of the model programs in the state for homeless and foster youth. I don't know how many years ago, and other districts were looking at us, and My understanding, which isn't in great detail, but I was told this by a pretty reliable source a couple of years ago, is that the funding structure changed, that the funds, that, I don't know, it was a grant or something special funding that we were getting for homeless and foster youth, and it was coming directly to Mount Diablo, and things changed and it started going to the county office of ed, right? And that change, that was a big time change for the resources that Mount Diablo has to serve this population. And it just seems to me, in my lack of detailed knowledge, that the two things line up. Now, I don't know how far when you go look at maybe the dashboard and see what the student outcomes. I mean, no, we were providing great services. Was that making a difference in terms of their outcomes? I don't know, but I just have a feeling that maybe that did have a direct impact. And again, that's a state decision, I guess, but it's also a local relationship issue, which I won't go into any further, but you know, I just think that potentially could have been a big factor in our numbers changing dramatically for those student populations. So I hope we can find out more about that.
To that point, as I said last time, we get supplemental funds and we get Title I funds to help our students that are in most need, and I think it might be time to take a look at how we're spending those. Does every school need to get the exact same amount? Probably not. I think we need to look at those and see how we best serve our kids in most need, because when our kids in most need do better, we all do better. And I just want to assure all of you out there listening, this is not any, I think I can speak for the whole board, we don't take this lightly. We've not been sitting at home waiting for somebody to come and hand us information. We've all been brainstorming. We've all been looking at ways to save, trying to be creative, thinking of other kinds of ways to fund. We are all wanting to keep this as far from the classroom as we can, but the reality is when 89% of your people are your salary or your budget, and every one of those people from district office to board members to teachers in the classroom are here to assist and help our kids, there are going to be people that are cut that we're going to regret. There's going to be programs we lose that we're going to regret. But we'll come through it on the other side. I just have to believe that we're going to do, and I don't believe, and Anita, it's like, well, let's cut a gazillion people just to be safe. That's not my thinking. I'm only one person, but that's why we're trying so hard to get the best numbers we can get. One of the numbers I keep asking for, and I'm going to be confident it'll be here next year, is by each department. I want to know how many people work in that department. I want to know what that department's budget is, so we know from the top down to the bottom exactly what we're cutting. But I just, again, want to assure you we're not taking it lightly. I wake up in the middle of the night and go, oh, how about this? Oh, how about that? And we'll get through it, but it is going to be hard. And we just have to, like Joanne says, not circle the wagon, not point fingers at anybody. Just know that we've been here before. I haven't. I've been on that side before. And so I can say I know being on that side what I didn't think should be cut. And now I'm thankful I'm on this side so I can lobby for those things that I didn't think should have been cut.
Other questions, other comments?
Yes, I had a couple of questions. One from some parents at the meetings, because now I'm talking about how we can improve our revenue. Parents are unclear, or they are clear in that they understand that attendance by students is important and we gain the revenue from that. But where they are unclear is how much time do the students have to be at school during a day before the district gets credit for the students' attendance. Because we have parents who are working swing shifts who can only take their children to the doctor or for certain types of appointments in the morning. They can bring their kids back to school, but they don't have the information. They're believing that if their kids are gone in the morning, then the day is wiped out. Yeah, you know. Or they're thinking maybe they can get their children to a doctor's appointment because doctor's offices close at 4:30. They have to get their kids in by 3, whatever. They're taking their students out of school. parents would like more information specifically at elementary, middle, and high school, the minutes that are required for attendance. And I think that's a fair expectation because I believe that our parents will step up and do their best to schedule their appointments appropriately and to support the district through that. We've heard some comments tonight about in regards to what Mr. Clark has said from the Contra Costa County Office of Education about using our unaudited actuals. But it was my understanding that the County Office of Education helped us define the $22.5 million number first, and now maybe has given us a little bit of wiggle room for a $21.1 million budget. So I don't know whether someone can make a comment about that today, but I feel like we're in a hard spot here between the County Office of Education in giving us two different stories. So I hope I wasn't too ornery when I said that.
No, so let me explain what happened, because we did let the bargaining groups know when we last met with them almost 2 weeks ago that the number was going to be changing. And the reason that the number was changing was because we were taking a look at every single line item in the Medea tentative agreement.
Right.
And there was confusion as to whether I'm just going to call it the 5.5%, if you will, if that was added on to substitutes.
Right.
And when we all calculated it, we added it on, and that's when we went back and we read it one more time. And when we read it one more time, we realized it didn't apply to substitutes. So then we had to do the calculations, and we had to back it out of all of the positions that we have. So that's why that number changed.
Right. But I'm questioning why.
I was going to say, Lisa, could you speak to, because again, what we've done is working with the county and Bill Clark, we've been consistently looking at our first interim numbers.
Correct.
What we've heard is that Bill has somehow relayed the information to others that we could have used or should have used the unaudited actuals, but again, in our work.
In our work, we always use the first interim.
Right. And the county office has also, so to speak, blessed the number that we've been proposing. They're reviewing the numbers that you're presenting
Absolutely.
to them.
They're double and triple checking all of our numbers. They have one staff member at the county office who is just assigned, who now has back access to all of our financial systems, to all of our numbers. They could pull up individual positions across the district and be able to run anything. They've got access to everything, and they're double checking all of our numbers.
Thank you. I have confidence in you. It's perplexing to hear the various statements that are coming forward, and we just have to work through this. And I don't mean to be dismissive. I want to move on because I know everyone's anxious to adjourn the meeting. For the foster youth and homeless question and the fact that we have been identified as underserving those two particular groups, I'm curious to understand, for that designation, are they looking at the students who are with us for a longer period of time versus students who come in for 6 months from San Francisco as a foster youth child and then is suddenly placed down in Madera as a foster youth child? Because I know of situations where that has happened. So we have a student for 6 months. How, those are things that you can explain to me privately. And for the homeless youth, we know that our school sites and our departments are working hard to identify those homeless students, to provide them with the resources and the families resources that they need. But I've also heard that we are being dinged for the fact that we are underreporting the homeless students. Are they advising us what we can do better to identify the homeless students? And because that seems like a very abstract requirement to have up on us, because families and students will frequently hide the fact that they are homeless. It's intentional, it's embarrassing. And are we supposed to identify them? I think knowing people in this community the way I do, they would do everything they could for homeless students. And so I just would like more information about that. Then the one other thing that I had was we indicated that the reserve will be around 3.11%. Is that reserve enough to cover our payroll? How much, if we are in a situation where the economy tanks, whatever, how many days of payroll will that cover?
3.11% reserve is approximately 6 days.
6 days of payroll. So we are putting, in some respects, you can say that I'm being a doomsday person, but we still have to keep that as a reality because we did go through the furlough days previously. And part of that was to make sure that folks were still getting salary. So I guess I'm being strident. I do care greatly about all of our employees, and it's sad to sit here. I sat here with perhaps Ms. Mason too when we went through the Prop 13 cuts. I sat in the audience right where Mr. Ferrante is sitting, and it was difficult because there were people that lost their jobs that I knew and valued deeply. And sitting here on the board, it was a challenge to go through those reductions between 2002 and 2012. I believe, yes, folks think I'm exaggerating that we started in 2002, but I can show you documents where we did start in 2002. We actually were doing some budget reductions prior to last year. So, we have been conscientious about this. I do agree with Ms. Mason. We will get through this, but it does break my heart. So, thank you.
Luckily, I have no heart.
I do have a few more questions. That's okay. So along the same lines as the reserve question, you mentioned significant expenditures, for example, if we had a reserve for textbook adoption. So just want to make sure the community is clear on this, because adoption of curriculum is one of our responsibilities. Many of our textbooks are quite old. We have no reserve for textbook adoption. Is that correct? Okay. Is there a state recommendation on that?
The answer was correct. We don't have a specific reserve set aside for textbook adoption.
But we do have budget for textbooks.
Correct. So there are a lot of school districts that will have identified reserves. They're going to have reserves for technology. They're going to have reserves for textbooks. I'm trying to think. Those are the ones that I'm most used to seeing.
There's GASB reserves for retirement benefits for individuals as well, technology as well for replacement processes. So there's different ways to structure your budget. Again, in some of our restricted dollars, we have some things in there, but they're not necessarily designated as individual reserves.
We can take the lottery money a portion of the lottery money that's required to be spent on textbooks. However, it's never enough for an adoption in a single year.
Correct. For example, if we wanted to do, let's just say an elementary language arts adoption for a district of our size, and I'm just pulling out of the air just because I have numbers from a prior situation, we would probably be looking at about $20 million in a district this size for K through, and it's a multi-year. So you would be going through the adoption, you'd have some money for professional development, but when you're looking at the number of students that we have TK through 5th grade in language arts, you're usually looking at like 5 to 6 years worth of the consumable items that go with those, at least in the primary grades, because students are writing on things and they get discarded. That's about how much you're looking at.
Okay, so that's also interesting. interesting. When we look at our funding. Thing over here. That's my page. You spoke about parent donations. So whether it's a PTA or PFC, that you cannot include those donations in the budget unless there's documentation. So I feel like I remember from my PFC days that once we as a PFC adopted our budget and provided documentation to the district, like in May, that then it could be, would you be able to include that?
Position, you're talking about buying a position.
Is it just for positions? Yeah, I don't know. I guess I'm just wondering, for parents who are concerned and wondering what they can do, if they're part of any kind of parent group or fundraising group, maybe our foundation, if between now and the final May decision, they're able to provide documentation to the district about the donations for next year, is that an action that helps?
What we're talking about, I think for clarification, a specific purpose though, right?
Right,
Yeah.
right.
So for, say, for a position or
And-
books or something.
Right. And those pieces already happen. But for example, if, I'm thinking, let's see, for next year, what are some of the ones that we talked about earlier? Anything that we're charging for facilities, any parent donations that we weren't expecting. I mean, so what we said was more a global comment. If it's a position that is going to be funded for a school site, absolutely, that is perfectly fine, and that can move forward, and nothing about that changes. Go ahead, you want to jump in?
Well, I was just going to say, the caveat here is that sometimes individual groups at schools think, well, we really like Mr. or Mrs. So-and-so, and so we want to keep them. When you're talking about reductions in force, we have to make sure that we're following processes for protection of the position or not having a position. So again, there's some limitations about we want to fund something which could go in the budget, but I just wanted to add that clarity. It may not be the person that they're thinking of.
That's very good for people to understand, yeah.
So if we have a documented agreement signed by whatever the organization, then we can set up a FTE and set up the budget. But it's not going to be for this certain individual. It has to be certain position for how many FTEs. So it's not going to even be the dollar amount because it changes based on who fills the position. But we can do budget as long as we have the document.
So for a position, it's the FTE like that. But what if it's supplies or items? Does that help?
Again, if we
about every dollar here.
If we have the contract signed by the organization and the promising not to exceed this amount, then we can budget for it.
So for another example, if we put in a grant for $100,000 and we weren't going to hear about that grant until August or September, we could not, even if we think we're going to get it, we cannot put that in our budget unless we have something in writing. And so that was the point that I was really trying to make, that, you know, I know that there was a question about some of the state revenue, and some of those adjustments come in mid-year, but we can't assume that because we got them in the past, we're going to continue to get them in the future. So we can use it mid-year to adjust our budgets, but we can't bank on it and budget on it even because we don't know ahead of time what's going to come in.
Well, I think one of the realities is when you have a large reserve, you have enough of a buffer that you're able to wait for those funds to come in. It doesn't make a material impact. That's not the situation we're in currently. One of my questions would be, and I think there are lots of little things we can do, but I think we have a large budget picture here that we need to look at with a very compressed timeline. So one of the things I'm interested in is understanding what was the timeline for those funds that from last year, and where are we in that time? So we have some understanding where if some of those funds were received 3 months ago, but like, you know, 3 months prior to where we are now, then the likelihood is we might not see those. But I would like some insight into that. I think that there is a universal agreement from anyone who has any knowledge of education in California that it is underfunded. But I think we have to deal with what our current reality is. To Ms. Mayo's point around, you know, a possible recession. If you look at the stock market today, and what that could mean, but that is a huge potential impact. In one day, the entire year, the gains of the stock market were wiped out in one day. California is incredibly tied to stock market gains. That is a huge bellwether for tax receipts in the state of California. One thing, and so there are a lot of things that we have known and we have shared over the last several years, but I think one thing that this board needs to look at is the fact that we have stated that as a best practice that one-time monies should be spent on one-time items and not on ongoing costs. And I think we have to take accountability as a board that in some instances that did not happen. That's just what the numbers tell us. I would like to understand better where that happened, but I think we as a board have to acknowledge and take responsibility for that as well, because that is part of this situation. So there are a whole lot of factors, but right now, I think as we went through this process, we did not really hear from our community of lots of here's ways to cut budgets, but I think what we heard more was here are what our funding priorities are as a community, that people are articulating here's what matters most, and I think we need to be respectful of that. But it still leaves us with the difficult choices of when we say, okay, here are the things that are most fundamental, most important, then we have to look at those other things and figure out where to cut.
I would also just say one more thing on the slide where we talk about how we can right-size our staff for the community to know. I think that's someone speaking from a fiscal perspective, right? By saying right-size, it's not, I don't think any of us feel that it's ideal to maximize class size, you know what I mean? None of us feel that that's ideal. So just to know that the discussion around class size and right-sizing is really around, fiscal efficiencies and trying to make the most out of every dollar, but not what we actually think is the ideal for instruction. It's not what any of us actually are.
So, contrary to popular belief, I am in no rush to adjourn this one. I think this is an incredibly important topic. So, it's 10:25. I'm happy to entertain and perhaps even support a meeting extension if members of the board desire, but I do want to put that out there, that this is not something I want us to be rushed on. I think that it's important. So I'm happy to entertain a motion for an extension, or if the board feels like things have sufficiently been covered for tonight, that's fine as well, but I want to call that up. We have about 5 minutes.
That was the last of my comments. I don't know if we had all this, were there some speakers that were speaking after us?
No.
Okay.
Any other board members? With that, I would like to go ahead and take a moment to, we'll be adjourning this meeting in memory of Joe Barrett, the Concord High student who passed away earlier this month, and I think one of the incredibly difficult for the community, but I thought it was a nice tribute tonight that it was mentioned that his efforts to be an organ donor resulted in 6 people benefiting from this tragedy. So I will go ahead and adjourn the meeting in his honor this evening. Thank you.
Thank you.